In my past life, my roommate Trixie was planning to go back to her boyfriend's hometown to get married, hoping it would bring good fortune to his family. I pleaded with her from the bottom of my heart not to go. She was convinced by my advice and stayed. Later, her boyfriend went back home and married his middle school classmate instead. The attempt to ward off bad luck with a wedding failed, and his mother still passed away. Yet that newlywed couple was living the high life, driving luxury cars and living in a mansion. When Trixie found out, she stormed into the dorm like a madwoman and started yelling at me. She said if I hadn't stopped her back then, she'd be the one living in a mansion and driving a luxury car now. Before I could say a word, she pushed me off the 6th floor. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day when she asked me with teary eyes if I wanted to go in this life. I will no longer make decisions for her. 1. Sarah, tell me, should I really go back to his hometown? With him or not? The familiar voice hit my ears, and my whole body went rigid as my eyes snapped open. The harsh glare from the fluorescent light on the dorm ceiling made my eyes ache. Half-dried laundry hung on the balcony, and last night's takeout containers were still piled on the desk. Across from me, Trixie sat on her bed clutching her phone, her eyes rimmed red as she gazed at me with a pitiful, pleading look. That very face. In my past life, she had looked at me with those same red-rimmed eyes, weeping as if she had suffered some grievous injustice. Yet later, it was this same face that contorted into a ghastly, monstrous visage as I lay dying. I remember her gripping my collar tightly, her eyes bloodshot, her voice piercingly shrill. Sarah, if you hadn't stopped me back then, I'd be living in a mansion and driving a luxury car by now. It's all your fault. In the next moment, she pushed me off the rooftop. The howling wind filled my ears as my body plummeted, the excruciating pain of shattered bone searing into my soul. Even now, chills still run up and down my spine. I pinched myself hard, barely managing to suppress the icy grip of impending death. Seeing that I remained silent, Trixie's tears began to fall again. Sarah, you've got to help me figure this out. I'm a complete mess right now. The other 2 girls in the dorm were startled by the commotion. Tiffany put down her nail polish and Jade took off one side of her headphones, both turning to look this way. If this were before, I would have spoken up by now. Out of the 4 of us in the dorm, I've always been the one with the most ideas. If someone had a fight with their boyfriend, they'd come to me. If someone didn't know how to ask their advisor for leave, they'd come to me. If someone wanted to switch part-time jobs but was afraid of getting scammed, they'd come to me. Even deciding where to eat for dorm gatherings always fell on me. And Trixie, she always came to ask me. She came from a poor background, standing at the door with a plastic bag in her arms when she first moved into the dorm, her smile tinged with shyness. Later, as we got to know her, we learned that her parents favored her brother, gave her little allowance, and often asked her to buy things for him. I felt sorry for her and often helped her. She couldn't bear to eat vegetables and always dipped her buns in soup, so I would get an extra meat dish, claiming I couldn't finish it, and share it with her. When she suffered from severe menstrual cramps to the point of turning pale, yet couldn't afford painkillers, I pretended to have bought too much and handed her brown sugar water and heat patches. She wanted to get a part-time job but even hesitated over bus fare, so I asked a friend to introduce her to a milk tea shop and a mall promotion near the school, and even covered the uniform deposit for her whenever she was short on cash. She'd come to me for a loan, tissues, shampoo, face wash, sheet masks, skincare products. She's helped herself to almost every personal item of mine in the dorm, and I never made a fuss about it. Over time, she got used to it. I was so used to picking up the phone the moment she started speaking. At that thought, I looked up at her, my voice flat. Why are you asking me about something like that? Trixie was visibly taken aback. I'm just not sure, and I'd like to hear your opinion, but I don't understand this either. I looked at her. Marriage is such a big decision. You should have discussed it with your family first. What did they say? Her expression stiffened slightly as she spoke in a soft voice. I haven't told them yet. Then ask them right away, I said in a neutral tone. This isn't the kind of thing an outsider can decide for you anyway. What, were you planning to make this decision on your own in secret? Trixie bit her lip, her eyes growing even redder. But if I ask, they definitely won't agree. Then it's all the more reason to be upfront about it, I said flatly. Just don't ask me. I've never been through this, and I wouldn't dare give you bad advice. This is a decision for a lifetime. If I say the wrong thing, I couldn't bear the responsibility. The dorm room fell silent for 2 seconds. Tiffany gave me a look of surprise. After all, the old me loved nothing more than analyzing the pros and cons for people. Trixie was stunned too, as if she never expected me to wash my hands of the matter so completely. I'm not asking you to take responsibility. Her voice softened further. I just think you're more decisive than I am, and you can see things more clearly from the sidelines. That doesn't help. I leaned back against the headboard. It's not my life to live. What could I possibly see clearly? If I said to go, it wouldn't be appropriate. It's not right for me to say no either, so don't ask me. Her face gradually turned pale, as if unwilling to give up. She turned to look at Tiffany again. Tiffany, so what do you think don't ask her. I cut in directly. The dorm room fell silent. Trixie whipped her head around. What do you mean? I looked at her, my tone still flat. It means this isn't something anyone should ask about. Marriage is for life. No one can make that decision for you. If you're really unsure, talk it over with your family first. That's a decision that will affect the rest of your life. As the last sentence was spoken, Tiffany's mouth, which had already opened, closed again. Jade also took off her headphones completely, frowned, looked at Trixie, and then at me. Trixie stood frozen in place, her eyes welling up and turning red. Her tears always came easily. Sure enough, a tear plopped down the very next second. Sarah, why are you being so harsh today? In my past life, I probably would have started wondering if I'd been too harsh, but now, all I feel is bitter amusement. All I did was refuse to take the blame she was trying to pass to me. I wasn't being harsh, I said flatly. I merely stated that I don't understand, and I don't dare to advise. Trixie bit her lip, remaining silent for a long time, then retreated to her bed with her phone, pulled the curtain shut, and stayed quiet. The dormitory was silent for a few minutes. Tiffany couldn't hold back first, whispering to me, "What's wrong with you today?" She was almost crying, and you didn't say a word to comfort her. I unscrewed my water bottle and took a sip, then asked her back, "Why didn't you try to persuade her?" Tiffany choked. "How could I dare?" "Well, there you go." I put the bottle back on the table. Marriage is such a big deal, and she didn't ask her parents but came to ask her roommate. Don't you find that strange? Tiffany paused for a moment. My tone was calm. Who would dare to advise on such a matter? If she makes a decision based on someone else's words and it doesn't work out, are you going to take responsibility for her? Tiffany fell silent instantly. Jade leaned back in her chair and, for once, spoke up for me. Sarah is right. This kind of thing should be discussed with the family first. I didn't respond, but deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Trixie wasn't going to give up that easily. You too. Sure enough, just after 11 p.m. that night, right after I'd stepped out of the shower, my phone buzzed a few times. Trixie texted me on WeChat, "Sarah, do you think I'm being really stupid? I'm not asking you to decide for me. I just want to hear what you think. You're so smart. You must see things more clearly than I do." I looked at those few lines and remembered how in my previous life, she had done the same, repeatedly questioning me, determined to extract a definitive answer from me. I replied to her, "I really don't understand this kind of thing. You should discuss it with your family first. Marriage is a lifelong commitment. I dare not speak carelessly." After sending, I casually took a screenshot and saved it. The next morning, Trixie stood on the balcony talking on the phone with her boyfriend. At first, she kept her voice down, but as they got to the main point, her tone slipped out. "What's really going on with your mom now? So, what does your family think?" "That's not what I meant. I just want to know, if we really go back, will it be..." She trailed off when she suddenly noticed all of us looking at her and immediately stopped talking. I bent down to pack my bag, fully aware of what was going on. It's not that she didn't want to go, on the contrary. Her heart had already leaned in that direction. Trixie came from a modest background, and her gentle nature meant she had always lacked someone firmly on her side. The guy had been nice to her, sweet-talked her, and his family was better off than Trixie's. For Trixie, this wasn't just an ordinary relationship, it was a tangible path she could see and feel, so she couldn't bear to let go. She couldn't bear to let go of the relationship, nor could she give up on this future that didn't seem so bad. Yet even so, she still didn't dare to shoulder the consequences herself. That's why she was desperate to hear a word of assurance from someone else. Jade, still groggy from just waking up, asked offhandedly, "Have you talked to your family yet?" Trixie's face paled, and she whispered, "Not yet." I slung my bag over my shoulder and said coolly, "Then you should sort this out with your family first." She looked up at me, her eyes already filled with resentment. I pretended not to see it and turned to leave the room. When I returned to the dorm at noon, Trixie was sitting on her bed, as if she had been waiting for me. As soon as I walked in, she asked in a low voice, "Sarah, have you been to the cafeteria yet? Could you grab me a meal while you're there? I don't have much of an appetite today and don't feel like going down." I placed the book on the table. "Can't." She was stunned. "Huh, I have something else to do later. I'm actually fine. I just don't want to do those little things for her anymore that she's grown so accustomed to." Trixie obviously noticed, and her expression faltered for a moment. "Well, forget it. I'll go myself." After she left, Tiffany whispered to me, "Did you two really have a falling out?" "No," I said indifferently. "I just suddenly felt that there are some things that don't need to be helped all the time." Tiffany frowned. "Isn't she going through a tough time right now? Do you really have to draw a line with her now?" I looked up at her and smiled. "So, not bringing her lunch means I'm drawing a line?" Tiffany was momentarily speechless. I Couldn't be bothered to explain. Some kindness, if given for too long, becomes taken for granted. Once you take it back, it feels like you've done something wrong, but why should it? Over the next few days, I began to gradually take back the conveniences I had previously given to Trixie. She borrowed my curling iron, and I said I needed it. She asked if I had extra face masks, and I said no. She wanted to borrow my white dress for a date, and I simply replied, not convenient. The most obvious one is borrowing money. On Thursday night, she stood by my desk for a long time before finally speaking in a small voice, her eyes red. Sarah, do you have some cash on hand? I was wondering if I could borrow $500 from you. I was doing my homework, not even looking up. You still haven't paid back the $800 you borrowed from me last time. Her face instantly went pale. I know. It's just that these past couple of days, when you're in a better spot financially, pay back the last loan. Along with this one, I looked up at her. I won't be lending you anything this time. Trixie stood rooted to the spot, and tears immediately began to fall. Do you have to be like this? I closed my pen and looked up at her. Like what? You weren't like this before, she said with a trembling voice. Sarah, if I did something wrong, you can just tell me. The way you're acting now, it really hurts me. With just that one sentence, she made it seem like I was the one deliberately tormenting her. Looking at her, I suddenly felt the urge to laugh. In my past life, she was a master of this very tactic too. She was clearly the one trying to take advantage, yet somehow I always ended up being the one left embarrassed. That was then, I said flatly. Just because I was willing to help before doesn't mean I'm obligated to keep helping now. And another thing, a loan is a loan. Money owed should be paid back. Trixie's tears fell even harder, her lips pressed tightly together, looking utterly wrong. Just then, someone from the next dorm came over. The moment they stepped in and saw her crying, they immediately frowned and looked at me. What's going on here? Trixie shook her head and said with a stuffy nose, it's fine, it's my own fault. The moment those words were spoken, the atmosphere shifted. The visiting girl's look towards me instantly changed. Sarah, come on, don't be like that. We're all in the same dorm. And you know her family's situation. I leaned back in my chair and cut her off. You know she's owed me that $800 for a year now. Trixie's face instantly went pale. I'll pay it back, then do it. I looked at her. What's with the tears? The room fell into a heavy, profound silence. The girl opened her mouth, but no words came out for a long moment. Trixie's tears fell even harder, yet she couldn't manage a single word in reply. After the others had left, Tiffany closed the door and asked me in a low voice, are you really not going to care about her at all now? I screwed the hand cream cap back on, my tone indifferent. It's not that I don't want to care, it's that I dare not. Tiffany frowned. Borrowing money and whether she gets married are two different things. They're two different things, I said, looking at her, but it just hit me. There are a lot of things I was never meant to carry on my own. Money is like that, possessions are like that, and the big things in life, especially. Tiffany was silent for a few seconds, as if she understood. Yet not completely. I didn't plan on explaining any further. After all, some lessons can't truly be learned until you've been bitten back. 2 days later, Trixie's boyfriend, Kevin, actually called me directly, standing in the shade outside the teaching building. I answered that unfamiliar local call. The tone on the other end of the phone was polite yet urgent. Hello, is this Sarah? I'm Kevin, Trixie's boyfriend. I gave a simple The thing is, Trixie is really torn right now. I know she listens to you the most. Could you help me persuade her? My mom's situation at home is really, you've got the wrong person. I cut him off directly. There was an obvious pause on the other end. What? I can't advise on this. My tone was indifferent. This is a major life decision for her. She should ask her family, not me. He was getting anxious. But she'll only listen to you right now. That's none of my business, I said flatly. I don't understand it, and I wouldn't dare give advice. It's between the two of you. Sort it out yourselves. With that, I hung up the phone. When I got back to the dorm that evening, Trixie was already sitting on her bed, waiting for me. Her eyes were red again, and the moment she saw me, she asked, why did you talk to Kevin like that? I put my bag on the table and looked up at her. How did I talk to him? He just wanted you to help talk some sense into me, she said, biting her lip. Was it really necessary to be so cold? As for that, I looked at her. It's because I could never have talked you out of it in the first place. Trixie froze. My tone wasn't harsh, but every word was spoken with deliberate clarity. How many times do I have to say it? I haven't been through this. I don't understand. Marriage is a huge decision. You should have talked it over with your family first, not come to me, and your boyfriend had even less business coming to me. I'm not your family, and I'm not a party to your relationship. Why on earth should I be the one making decisions for you two? My words left her pale and speechless. Several seconds passed before she managed to force out a sentence. I never said you had to be responsible for it. Just because you didn't say it out loud doesn't mean you won't resent me later. I looked at her. So I'm making myself clear now. I don't understand. I'm not sure, so I won't give advice. It was the first time in my life I had ever been so brutally honest. Trixie stared at me, the fragile sheen of tears in her eyes finally giving way, revealing a faint glimmer of resentment. She probably realized it too this time. I wouldn't indulge her, placate her, or shoulder her burdens like I used to. She fell silent. On the weekend, Trixie finally called home. I didn't hear it. She mentioned it herself in the dorm group chat that evening. My parents don't agree. A few minutes later, she added another message. They just don't understand me at all. Tiffany looked at the group messages and sighed. Her family definitely wouldn't allow it. Jade didn't even look up. That's normal. Who would agree to let a college student who hasn't even graduated drop out of school to get married, especially for something like a propitiatory wedding? Trixie didn't reply, but I knew, deep down, she already had her answer. It wasn't that she hadn't made up her mind, she just didn't want to bear the weight of that decision alone. 3 more days passed, and Trixie took a leave of absence. She stood at the dormitory door with her suitcase, which I had given her. Her eyes were red and swollen, indicating she had cried a lot these past few days, but I knew too well that if she had already packed her suitcase, it meant she had made up her mind long ago. She stood by my bed, as if still unwilling, wanting to hear one last word from me. Sarah, I've decided to go back with Kevin. I looked down at my phone and responded with a simple, She gripped the handle of her suitcase, paused for a few seconds, and then asked, "Don't you have anything to say to me?" It was then that I looked up at her. Yes, her eyes lit up. I looked at her, my tone calm. Call your parents first to let them know you've arrived safely. If possible, discuss it with them again. Don't make decisions about this on your own without talking to anyone. Think it through carefully yourself. Trixie's expression gradually froze. Perhaps this was never what she wanted to hear. Finally, she bit her lip and left with her suitcase. The dorm was eerily quiet the moment the door closed. I looked at her empty bed and slowly let out a sigh, for after Trixie left, the dormitory fell into a sudden, profound quiet. But even though she was gone, her messages seemed to have a life of their own, finding their way into our phones every few days. At first, she was still putting on a show of prosperity in the dorm group chat. First, she posted a photo of a table laden with dishes, chicken soup, steamed fish, braised pork belly. The table was packed, each dish got a close-up shot, as if she was afraid people might miss them. Auntie is in much better spirits today. 2 days later, another selfie. She wore a gold necklace around her neck, intentionally zooming the camera in close. It was something his family insisted on giving later. There was a photo of her standing at the gate of the courtyard. She wore a red dress, her face powdered, her lips painted bright, with Kevin standing beside her, a large red character pasted on the door. It will all get better slowly. Tiffany stared at her phone for a long time, then couldn't help but click her tongue. She doesn't look like she's going to bring good luck. She looks like she's going to show off her turnover. Jade sneered. The more she posts like this, the more it shows she's insecure. Indeed, she's the type who, if she's truly doing well, would rather keep it to herself. Only those who lack confidence would desperately try to show off, almost as if they want to prove with every meal, every piece of jewelry, and every polite remark that they made the right choice. Sure enough, not long after, she stopped posting those peaceful life photos in the group, changed to private chat with me. First, she complained about how difficult her mother-in-law is to deal with. She said that the woman who only regained her breath thanks to her blessing didn't treat her as a savior, but rather as a free maid. She complained about her cooking being too salty, the oil being too much, her laundry being slow, her inability to read the room, and even made sarcastic remarks like, "Young people are so spoiled." When she sat for a while, then she started complaining about Kevin again. She said Kevin wasn't as protective of her as he used to be when he was pursuing her. Every time she had a conflict with her mother-in-law, Kevin would either pretend not to hear or ignore it. If she said a few more words, he would frown and say, "I'm stuck in the middle and it's exhausting. Can't you be more understanding?" She sent me a long message and finally asked, "Sarah, what should I do?" Now, shortly after, she sent another message, "But I've come this far." I stared at that line for a long time, but in the end, I didn't reply. The path was her own choice. She jumped into the pit herself. She got to where she is today step by step, not pushed by others. For the next month or so, Trixie just lingered. She was unwilling to leave, yet couldn't live well. When it came down to it, she just couldn't bring herself to leave. For one thing, she still had feelings for Kevin. For another, no matter how chaotic Kevin's family was, it was still a far cry better than the home she came from. At least there, she had enough to eat, decent clothes to wear, and the prospect of a better life, the promise of having married up, to keep her going. She kept telling herself that if she could just endure a little longer, grit her teeth through a bit more, things would eventually work themselves out. Unfortunately, she didn't wait for shun but instead received a greater retribution. At first, it was Just Kevin, who couldn't put his phone down. He checked it while eating, walking, and even took it to the bathroom later on. He even brought it into the shower. The chat history was being deleted more and more frequently, and the trips out of the house were becoming increasingly common. At first, Trixie was just fooling herself. She told me it was probably just family stress. Kevin was upset and needed to get some air, which was perfectly normal, but even as she said it, she didn't believe a word of it. One night, she sneaked a peek at Kevin's phone while he was asleep. At 3 a.m, she called me a dozen times in a row. I woke up to my phone vibrating, its screen flickering in the dark. The caller ID displayed 2 words, Trixie. I picked up, and before I could say a word, I heard her gasping for breath on the other end. Sarah, Kevin cheated on me. I was too lazy to listen closely. Just as she was crying and cursing, a name suddenly slipped out of her mouth. That bitch Vivian. My grip on the phone tightened abruptly. Vivian, that name, I know it all too well. In my past life, just before Trixie pushed me down the stairs, she kept muttering that name over and over. She said it was because I stopped her that Vivian was able to swoop in and take advantage. She claimed that after Vivian married into that family, she lived in a mansion, drove luxury cars, and stole the life that was rightfully hers. I was silent for a couple of seconds, my voice flat. Who are you talking about? Vivian, Trixie's voice cracked with emotion, Kevin's middle school classmate. They were always flirty back then. I can't believe it. After all these years, she's still haunting him. I leaned back against the headboard, suddenly wide awake. After all this time, it's still her. Trixie is still falling apart over there. She says she hasn't caught them in the act yet, but the messages on her phone are already driving her crazy. Good morning. Good night. Delivering medicine and fruit. Remember to add clothes when it gets colder, and I'll bring you porridge if your stomach hurts tomorrow. On the surface, they claim it's just old classmates catching up, but the hidden flirtatiousness in their words is unmistakable. It's obvious to anyone with half a brain that they've crossed the line long ago. What drove Trixie crazy was how perfect Vivian's life seemed. She lived in a prestigious upscale community, and her social media was filled with photos of afternoon tea or beach vacations, rotating through designer bags, jewelry, and luxury shoes, with a car that wasn't cheap either. A woman who seemed to have everything, yet she still had her eyes on the man Trixie had finally managed to get. Trixie's voice trembled with growing hatred as she spoke. She's already so rich. Why does she have to take my husband? She has everything. Why does she have to covet my things? The next morning, Trixie sent me dozens of messages again. One moment she was calling Vivian a homewrecker, the next, she was cursing Kevin for being a heartless bastard. Then, through tears, she'd ask herself what she lacked that Vivian had. This went on until noon, when she finally said, I'm going to find her. I stared at those words and eventually replied, calm down, don't go yet. This is the first time I've stopped her head on since my rebirth. Not to save her. I know too well that someone like her, who's at the end of their rope, can go crazy and bring misfortune to anyone involved. Unfortunately, I still underestimated her. Not only did she go, but she also made things even uglier than in her previous life. 5. I didn't have the full picture of what happened next. Not at first. Some details came from Trixie, sobbing over the phone. Others were picked up by Tiffany and the girls from various sources. Bit by bit, the whole story finally came together. That day, Trixie had gone to plead with Vivian. She went out of her way to change into a dress, put on makeup, and even bought some fruit. It was as if she wanted to present herself with a bit of dignity, to at least not lose face too badly. She said that at first, she genuinely intended to swallow her pride and beg her way through this. She arrived at Vivian's apartment complex and waited downstairs for a long time. Finally, Vivian descended in her high heels, dressed in designer clothes, carrying a handbag, every hair on her head exuding an air of meticulous refinement. When Trixie finally spoke, her tone was still soft and placating. She said, Miss Vivian, I beg you, with your conditions, what kind of man can't you find? Can you please stop contacting Kevin? Vivian stood on the steps, looking down at her as if she were a joke. She didn't take the fruit, nor did she respond. She just curled her lips. You're begging me. Trixie said that her face immediately flushed, but she endured it. She continued, you have money, a house, a car, you lack for nothing. But all I have left is Kevin. Please, just let us go. Vivian let out a laugh. Right then and there, let you go, she repeated slowly, her gaze sweeping over Trixie's entire body as lightly and as sharply as a blade. You've got it all wrong. I never stole anything from you. If a man chooses to be with someone, shouldn't you be asking him why? That remark was a slap in the face all on its own. Just then, Kevin arrived. Trixie had hoped he would side with her, but Kevin came over, grabbed her arm without even asking, and his face looked like he was about to explode. Are you crazy? Who told you to come here? Trixie was stunned. On the spot, "Who do you think I'm here for? Kevin, can't you see she's hitting on you?" Kevin completely ignored her question, gritting his teeth as he hissed under his breath, "Could you stop making a scene? Making a scene." Those words felt like a public slap across Trixie's face. She had already ground her pride into the dirt by coming to beg for help, yet the man she pleaded with not only failed to protect her, but stood before another woman and called her an embarrassment. Vivian stood to the side, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with barely concealed mockery in her eyes. Trixie just saw red. She said later that her mind went completely blank with a loud buzz, and all reason deserted her. She first slammed the fruit in her hand onto the ground, and apples rolled everywhere. Then she lunged forward and yanked Vivian's hair, her curses growing increasingly vulgar. "Aren't you so capable? Aren't you so high and mighty? You're trying to steal someone else's man, and you still have the nerve to act decent." The scene instantly descended into chaos. Kevin tried to pull her away, but Trixie lashed out with her nails. Vivian wasn't one to back down either. She raised her hand and slapped Trixie. Two women were entangled at the edge of the steps, their hair disheveled, skirts askew, and faces contorted with rage. In the midst of the struggle, Vivian's foot slipped, and she tumbled down the steps. The moment she hit the ground, her face turned pale, and blood soon appeared between her legs. The scene fell silent for a brief moment. In the next moment, Trixie was also stunned. Her voice cracked. "I didn't mean to." Unfortunately, no one believed this. "Vivian is pregnant." The child was gone on the spot. Trixie later cried uncontrollably on the phone, saying she only pushed once and had no idea Vivian was pregnant. But no matter how pitiful she sounded, the situation had already spiraled out of control. The best is yet to come. After her miscarriage, Vivian had just woken up and was completely falling apart emotionally. Presumably thinking she was alone in the hospital room, she grabbed her phone and started making a tearful call, her voice sharp and frantic, holding nothing back. As fate would have it, every word was heard loud and clear by Trixie, who was eavesdropping from just outside the door. "I've lost the baby, and you still won't come to see me. Didn't you promise you'd give me an explanation? Lao Su, what am I supposed to do now?" When Trixie called me later, there was even an excitement in her voice she couldn't contain. "Sarah, guess what? That bitch Vivian is finally getting what she deserves." It turns out that phone call wasn't answered by Mr. Su himself at all. It was Mr. Su's wife. Apparently, Mrs. Su had her suspicions all along, but in the past, Mr. Su had always covered for Vivian, claiming she was his secretary, a distant relative, or just someone he was helping out. Without solid proof, Mrs. Su had to let a lot of things slide. This time, the evidence came to us. On the other end of the line, Vivian didn't know who she was talking to, sobbing uncontrollably, repeating, "Our child is gone, and when will you come to be with me?" until a cold voice asked, "Vivian, whose child are you saying is gone? Who are you calling now?" They say in that instant, the hospital room fell so silent you could have heard a pin drop. Vivian froze on the spot. The color drained from her face in an instant, and she nearly dropped her phone, but before she could smooth things over, the person on the other end of the line completely lost it. Mrs. Su began lashing out, one cutting remark after another. "I really underestimated you. You put on such an innocent act in public, but behind the scenes, you're quite skilled at cozying up to the boss. You're already pregnant. How long do you plan to keep up this act?" It said that quite a crowd had gathered outside the hospital room that day, the nurses, family members, and passers-by who stopped to gawk. Everyone got the gist of it. The veneer of dignity Vivian always maintained was stripped away from her right then and there. She had planned to use the baby in her womb to force her way to the top, but the baby was lost, the relationship was exposed on the spot, and her reputation was shattered. 6. It was only when I heard this that I finally began to piece together the inconsistencies from my previous life. In my previous life, Trixie didn't get married. Later, she only heard that Kevin turned around and married Vivian, living in a luxurious mansion and driving a luxury car, enjoying a very glamorous life. That's exactly why she blamed all her resentment on me, convinced that I had held her back and caused her to miss the wealth and fortune that should have been hers. But looking back now, those mansions and luxury cars might not have been legitimate from the very beginning, if I'm not mistaken. In the previous life, Mrs. Su only had suspicions but never caught solid evidence, so the matter was never fully exposed. Vivian eventually got married, and while the wedding looked picture perfect on the surface, it conveniently swept all that messy business under the rug. This time around, the scandal broke early, and when it did, it was brutal, sordid, and utterly humiliating. Word has it that Mr. Su built his entire fortune on the back of his wife's family connections. A single outburst from Mrs. Su was enough to turn his world upside down. Not long after, they Divorced, all the connections in the company, project resources, and the assets that gave him clout were reclaimed by Mrs. Sue. The house wasn't Vivian's, the car wasn't Vivian's, and even her former high and mighty facade was nothing more than a shadow stolen from someone else's money and connections. Now that layer of skin has been stripped away, she is nothing. When Trixie later sent me a voice message, her tone was full of gloating satisfaction. Vivian has lost everything now. The house is gone, the car is gone, and the children are gone too. Boss Sue is practically a stray dog himself now. When would he have time to look after her? And Kevin, he's as meek as a lamb these days, wouldn't dare give me any more trouble. She said all this with a hint of smugness in her tone, as if with Vivian down and Kevin cowed, she had become the ultimate victor. She was too early to celebrate, because the real retribution is just beginning. Mr. Sue didn't dare to continue his feud with his ex-wife. Nor did he want the scandal to become public and ruin his reputation. So he simply took out all his anger on others. The child is gone, and it's Trixie's fault. The whole thing blew up because of Kevin. Vivian's downfall was also caused by those two. Anyone else was more to blame than he was. Before long, people from his side showed up, using the killed the child accusation as their pretext. Trixie is really panicking this time. When she messaged me, her typing was all over the place. They're all blaming me now. Kevin's family blames me, and so does Boss Sue, Sarah. I really didn't expect it to turn out like this. I looked at those few lines and couldn't help but laugh. Every time she pushed her luck, she always thought she was just standing her ground. When the trouble finally hit, she would always act like she never saw it coming. A few families quickly got into a fierce fight. Kevin's family initially wanted to keep the matter under wraps, but the people from Boss Sue's side were not interested in reasoning, blocking the door, slamming the table, and constantly demanding compensation, human lives, and explanations. Trixie was caught in the middle and was scolded mercilessly. Kevin blamed her for being brainless and causing a scene. Kevin's dad blamed her for being a jinx, saying she had turned the house upside down shortly after arriving, and the mother-in-law she had desperately tried to bring good luck to finally showed her true colors this time. She pointed her finger at Trixie's nose, cursing her for being stubborn, unlucky, and a source of trouble. If it weren't for you, this troublemaker, coming into our home, would our family have ended up like this? I must have been blind to have brought you back in the first place. Driven mad by the insults, Trixie shrieked back in retaliation. Inside, the shouting match was a complete chaos, while outside, someone was pounding on the door. Kevin's mom was already in poor health, and this emotional outburst made her so angry that her face turned pale, and her chest heaved violently. But no one in the room paid any attention to her until in the midst of the pushing and chaos, she lost her balance and collapsed. By the time she was rushed to the hospital, it was already too late. At this point, I felt a momentary disorientation. In my previous life, Kevin's mother also passed away. Back then, everyone said it was because the illness couldn't be endured, and the propitious event didn't work. But as I've come this far in this life, I've become increasingly suspicious. Her death in her previous life might not have been due to illness. After all, after that, things spiraled completely out of control. On one side, there was a miscarriage, on the other, a death. An affair was exposed. While several families scrambled to pin the blame on each other, everyone had dirty hands, and everyone was afraid of getting dragged down themselves, so they only made the whole mess uglier, nastier, and more impossible to clean up. There were a lot of rumors flying around about how it was actually handled, but I never looked into them closely. All I know is, Kevin did a complete about-face and became dead set on divorcing Trixie. Trixie, of course, refused, but her refusal was pointless. Kevin's last shred of patience for her had long been worn away by all the petty drama. He even berated her in front of others. What else can you do besides cause trouble? The biggest regret of my life is ever getting involved with you. Those words hit Trixie harder than a slap across the face, because what she got in return for betting everything was a single sentence: my biggest regret is ever getting involved with you. It was almost laughable that Trixie thought of her parents right at that moment. Yes, even her parents, who had always favored sons over daughters, had rushed to be there. Of course, they weren't here to back her up. They came to settle accounts. They rushed to Kevin's house, wailing and lamenting, claiming their daughter's life was ruined, and constantly demanding compensation. After a few rounds of commotion, they actually managed to squeeze some money out of Kevin's family. The moment the money was in their hands, their expressions visibly brightened, yet they still weren't satisfied, because their daughter, that pawn of theirs, was practically useless now. She could have earned money after graduating, but now she'd dropped out, her reputation was ruined, her marriage was on the rocks, and they could see even the last bit of value was about to be squeezed dry, so they turned around and took their grievances straight to the school. They accused the school of being irresponsible, the counselor of neglecting the students, and questioned how the institution could just stand by and watch a girl drop out to get married before even graduating. It was only then that we found out Trixie had secretly withdrawn from school a while ago. The dormitory erupted into chaos. Tiffany stared at her phone, stunned for a long moment. When did she drop out? How come we didn't hear a single thing about it? Jade sneered. What else? She was afraid people would stop her, afraid they'd find out she's throwing her education away just to get married. To be honest, I'm not surprised at all. 7. After the whole mess reached the school, Trixie came back with her parents that day. She stood outside the counselor's office, her eyes red and swollen from crying, looking utterly disheveled, but the moment she saw me, her eyes lit up. It wasn't the look you give a friend, that was the look of someone seeing a scapegoat. She rushed over to me in a few steps, her tears falling on cue, her voice soft and hoarse, putting on an act as if she had suffered a grave injustice. Sarah, I know you don't want to talk to me right now, but you can't just deny it. If it weren't for you constantly giving me advice, how would I have ended up like this? The office suddenly fell silent. Tiffany exploded on the spot. What are you talking about? Trixie cried even harder. I'm not talking nonsense. She clearly knew I was confused at the time, clearly knew Kevin's family situation was complicated. If she had stopped me a few more times, I wouldn't have. That's enough. I cut her off directly. I unlocked my phone, retrieved the screenshots I had saved earlier, and placed them one by one on the table. The first one was the reply I sent her when she first asked me. Getting married is a huge decision. You should talk to your parents first. The second one was my reply when she pressed me for an answer. I don't understand these things, and I wouldn't dare give advice. The third one was the last thing I said to her before she left. Think it through for yourself, and remember to talk to your parents about it. I slid the phone toward her. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear enough for everyone in the office to hear. Tell me, which part of what I said sounded like I was giving you advice? Did I tell you to go, or did I tell you to marry him? I've been telling you from the start to talk it over with your family and think it through for yourself. And now you've made a mess of your own life, and you come here to blame me. She opened her mouth, ready to sob out some excuse. Jade cut in coldly. Our whole dorm can vouch for this. She never made a single decision for you. You're the one who went around the whole building asking everyone for advice, and then gave them the cold shoulder if they didn't tell you what you wanted to hear. Tiffany chimed in. So you weren't really here for advice back then. You just wanted someone to make the decision for you and take the blame if things went wrong. Good thing Sarah was sharp. A few classmates nearby nodded in agreement. Someone recalled Trixie asking for opinions everywhere during that time. Someone said she was already dead set on getting married, and no one could talk her out of it. Someone else muttered softly, isn't she just reaping what she sowed? With each remark, Trixie's already pale face turned even whiter. The counselor's expression darkened after hearing the story. She looked at Trixie, her tone both disappointed and cold. You chose to drop out, you chose to get married, and now that things have gone wrong, you blame your classmates. This is not the place for you to act up. No one else is obligated to take responsibility for your life. Trixie's mom was about to throw a tantrum, but when the evidence was laid out clearly, her arrogance immediately deflated. Trixie's dad looked utterly embarrassed, as if he couldn't bear the shame, and yanked her hard by the arm. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? The sudden yank sent Trixie stumbling forward, and her tears began to fall in earnest, but this time, no one was buying her act. She stood rooted to the spot, her face flushing and paling by turns. Her lips trembled for a long moment, but in the end, she couldn't muster a single coherent word. In the end, her parents came and took her away. I heard Kevin cut all ties with her for good. Vivian's a wreck. Kevin's a mess. Boss Sue crashed and burned. And Trixie, who thought she could climb over others to get ahead, ended up with nothing, completely shattering her own life instead. After she went back to her hometown, her reputation was completely ruined. She had dropped out of school, caused trouble, almost got involved in a murder, and was kicked out by her in-laws. All these rumors spread like wildfire. Her parents found her unlucky and a financial burden, and eventually, they couldn't even be bothered to pretend anymore. They just wanted to sell her off again for a decent bride price. It's said that in the end, they really married her off to an older man. The conditions were bad, and his temper was worse, but Trixie no longer had the luxury of choice. In my past life, she killed me. In this life, I did nothing, just stood still and watching her step by step, pushing herself into the abyss with her own hands. Story 2. The moment my brother Cashin was born, my mother dug a claw hammer out of her toolbox. She'd felt a slight protrusion on his ear, what folks call a rebellious bone, said to foretell a defiant nature. She insisted, if we don't smash this bone flat, he'll grow up trouble, an ungrateful wretch who'll never learn loyalty. This hammer strike will change his fate, make him obedient, successful, spare us all future grief. I threw myself in front of that hammer with everything I had, saving his ear from being torn off, but later, he squandered his life on drinking, gambling, and women, racking up massive loan shark debts to pay off his debts. I drained all my savings and piled up loans from everywhere. I thought my sacrifice would make him turn his life around, but instead it only brought more demands and resentment from him. After I refused to pay off his latest gambling debt, my mother pointed at my face and screamed, "This is all your fault. If you hadn't stopped me back then, one good hit with my hammer would have fixed him for good. How could he have ended up like this? You just can't stand to see your brother doing well. You're deliberately trying to ruin our family." My brother glared at me with pure hatred and threw the loan sharks collection notice in my face. "You did this to me. You ruined my life. You should pay for this with your life." He burst into my room with a fruit knife and stabbed me to death. When I opened my eyes again, my mother was holding that claw hammer, aiming it at the baby in the swaddling clothes. The baby's piercing cries slowly brought me back to my senses. Before my eyes, my mother Lily, with a fanatical look on her face, was holding high the claw hammer, meant for driving nails, pointing it directly at her own 3-day-old son. The cold metal reflected her contorted face. "Hope, Hope, are you deaf? Stop your mother." No, my dad Arthur was beside us, sweating bullets, too scared to step in himself. He kept his voice low and shoved my arm repeatedly. "You're educated. Use your words. Tell your mother this could get someone killed. Hurry." He always hides behind me, using me as his human shield. In my past life, I listened to him, sobbing and clinging to my mother's leg, begging her not to go through with it. In the end, my mother took out all her anger on me, and I ended up bearing the full weight of my brother's tragic life. This time, I refused to play the fool's hero again. Under my father's anxious gaze, I didn't step forward but instead calmly retreated to the side, completely clearing the space between him and my mother. Then, I offered my mother, her face twisted with fury, a faint, understanding smile. "Dad, don't worry. Mom is his birth mother. Why would she harm him? She must have his best interests at heart. I trust her." My father stared at me in disbelief. Upon hearing my words, the last trace of hesitation vanished from my mother's eyes, replaced by the sheer delight of finding a kindred spirit. "See, I told you my daughter gets it." She shot my father a triumphant glance. "Arthur, what would you know with your narrow perspective? I'm doing this for his own good. As the old saying goes, rebellious bones in the ears mark a born traitor. A child like this can never be tamed. They have no loyalty to their own parents. One day they'd even raise a hand against us for some outsider. This hammer of mine today is going to smash his rebellious roots and shatter his wild nature. Only then will he learn to obey, stand with us as one, achieve great things, and earn big money to support us in our old age." My father turned pale with terror at her words. Seeing he couldn't reason with my mother, he started frantically signaling me with his eyes, hissing under his breath, "Hope, listen to this. Your mother's lost her mind. Say something, quick. Tell her we should wait a couple days. Consult someone who knows about these things. Hurry, buy us some time." I caught his signal and pretended to be torn, stepping forward to tug at my mother's sleeve with a placating tone. "Mom, Dad's just worried about little brother. How about we just smash one side today to test the waters? If it works, we can do the other side in a couple days." Before I could finish, my mother sharply shook off my hand and snapped, "Test what waters? In 2 days the opportunity will be gone. Changing fate requires decisive action and one complete transformation. If you keep dragging your feet and giving up halfway, you'll never amount to anything. We must eradicate the root of misfortune in one go." Our hesitation seemed to infuriate her completely. She shoved me aside with brute force. "Here we go again. Get out of my way, all of you. Don't you dare ruin my son's future." Just like in my past life, without another moment's hesitation, she swung her arm in a wide arc, bringing the claw hammer down with a whoosh toward the left ear of the infant swaddled in blankets. A dull thud echoed. The baby's wail instantly intensified. My dad let out a sharp cry and collapsed to the ground in terror. But that wasn't the end of it. My mother, unsatisfied with just one strike, actually raised the hammer and delivered another blow. "Good things come in pairs. If you're going to do it thoroughly." Another dull thud followed. The baby's face had turned purple from crying. My mother steeled herself and struck the right ear. This time, the baby's piercing cries abruptly ceased. The world seemed to fall silent, broken only by the faint twitching of his limbs and the gurgle of blood welling behind his ear. I watched calmly, my heart utterly unmoved. "You're insane. "You madwoman, you've killed your own son." My father finally snapped out of his daze, scrambling frantically on all fours to reach the child, but my mother was faster than him. There wasn't a trace of fear on her face. Instead, it bore the satisfied look of someone who had just accomplished something major. She stopped my father in his tracks, glanced at the bloody mess behind the baby's ear, and said dismissively, "What's all the fuss about? Kids' bones are flexible. It's not like this will kill them." With that, she spun around and rushed to the stove, grabbing a handful of dark incense ash from the burner and pressing it directly onto my brother's wound. The blood mixed with the ash, forming a disgusting blackish red paste. As she applied pressure, she muttered incantations under her breath. "Don't panic. Incense ash stops bleeding and calls upon the gods' protection. It works better than hospital medicine." My father lay collapsed on the ground, his lips trembling uncontrollably, unable to utter a single word. He watched helplessly as my mother smeared that dark red, filthy incense ash over our baby's mangled ears. The bleeding stopped temporarily, but the infant's face had turned a ghastly purplish blue from the high fever and lack of oxygen. He lay there like a fish tossed ashore, barely twitching, completely silent. My mother was breathing heavily, completely exhausted with sweat beading on her forehead. Yet her eyes shone with the serene glow of someone who had accomplished a sacred mission. My father's desperate gaze fell upon me, his last hope, praying that I, his educated daughter, would step forward and speak the truth. I cut his silent plea slowly. I walked over to stand before my mother. Under her watchful gaze, I picked up the enamel mug from the table, filled it to the brim with water, and handed it to her with both hands. "Mom, you've worked so hard," I said softly, with just the right blend of concern and admiration in my voice. "Have some water and rest a bit. With you personally changing his fate, little brother is sure to have great blessings in the future." Hearing this, the last glimmer of hope in my father's eyes faded into complete desolation. He realized his only ally had turned against him. My mother was taken aback for a moment, then raised an eyebrow, her eyes brimming with delight. She took the glass, gulped down most of the water in a few swift draughts, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, and looked triumphantly at her husband, lying collapsed on the floor. "Did you hear that? Even hope is more sensible than you, a grown man like you, utterly useless, just sitting here whining." After her outburst, she gently patted my head with affection. "My hope is still the best, knowing how much your mother has worried herself sick over you two siblings." I obediently lowered my head, concealing the coldness in my eyes. For the next few hours, my mother was completely absorbed in the joy of having successfully changed her fate, turning a deaf ear to my father's repeated urgings to go to the hospital. It wasn't until nightfall that my brother's condition took a sharp turn for the worse. He developed a persistent high fever, his entire body burning up like a furnace. The previously mild twitching escalated into increasingly frequent convulsions, his limbs stiffened, and he began foaming at the mouth. "Oh no, he's having a seizure, Lily. We have to get to the hospital now." Too, my dad finally snapped into action. Bang. My mom was startled too, but she quickly composed herself. She rushed over and pinned down my brother's convulsing body, her eyes blazing with even greater intensity. She screamed at my father, "This isn't a seizure, it's a divine possession. The gods are restructuring his very bones. This is a blessing. If you dare interfere now, you'll disrupt their sacred work and bring heaven's wrath upon us." While shouting, she snatched the heaviest quilt nearby and without hesitation draped it over my brother, swaddling him completely. "Just sweat it out. When the gods work, sweating drives all the impurities from the body." Beneath the quilt, my brother's convulsions grew fainter and fainter. My father completely broke down. He dropped to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably while slapping his own face. Meanwhile, my mother knelt by the quilt, hands clasped in prayer, murmuring incantations as she awaited a miracle. Beneath the heavy quilt, my brother's convulsions gradually subsided. My father scrambled over on all fours and yanked the quilt away in one frantic motion. Under the blanket, the baby lay with eyes tightly shut, lips tinged purple, its little face swollen like an eggplant, and no movement in its chest. He's not breathing." Bang. My dad let out a sharp cry, whipping his head around, his bloodshot eyes fixed fiercely on my mom, who was still muttering under her breath. "You vicious woman, I'll kill you," he roared, charging at my mother for the first time and shoving her away with all his might. Caught off guard, my mother fell backward and slammed into the corner of the table, crying out in pain. Ignoring her, my father trembled as he picked up the feverish, lifeless little body and dashed frantically toward the door. "Hope, quick, save your brother," he shouted at me in despair. Without hesitation, I grabbed my coat from the chairback and calmly followed. There were no taxis on the village road late at night. My father, clutching the child, ran for dear life. I followed behind, using my phone to call a car and have it wait at the village entrance. All along the way, my mother's curses echoed from behind in the distance. Arthur, you damned bastard who'll die without an heir. How dare you take my son away? I curse you to be hit by a car when you step out. I curse you to spend the rest of your life begging in poverty. Give my good fortune back to me. The voice was filled with venom and resentment. My father shuddered but didn't break stride. Carrying my brother directly into the taxi waiting at the village entrance, the emergency room at the city hospital, the doctor on duty took one look at my brother's condition and his face instantly changed. Quick, to the resuscitation room, prepare for intubation, get the ventilator ready. The doctor fired off instructions while angrily confronting my father. How did this child get injured on the head? What's this black substance? What kind of parents are you? My father stood frozen in terror. Trembling too much to form a single word, I calmly stepped forward and answered for him. Doctor, his mother hit him with a hammer and then put incense ash on the wound. Every doctor and nurse in the emergency room stopped what they were doing and stared at us as if we were monsters. The attending physician was so furious his face turned ashen, and he pointed at my father's nose, yelling, "This is outrageous. This is intentional harm. Just wait, I'm calling the police right now. Please, don't call the police." My father's legs gave way beneath him, nearly buckling as he pleaded with a choked sob. After a series of frantic examinations and emergency procedures, my brother finally regained faint signs of heartbeat and breathing, and was rushed to the neonatal intensive care unit. The attending physician slammed a critical condition notice onto the table in front of my father. The patient has a skull fracture with a contaminated wound that led to a severe infection. Bacteria have entered the brain, causing acute purulent meningitis. The child is in critical condition and could die at any moment. Even if we save them, there's a high probability of permanent brain damage. Potential outcomes include intellectual disability, paralysis, deafness, or blindness. You need to prepare yourselves for this. My father read the diagnosis on the critical condition notice and staggered. The doctor ignored him and handed over another form. Here's the cost estimate. You'll need to pay a 50,000 yuan deposit first, and the final bill will definitely be higher. 50,000, that number was the final straw that completely broke my father. He didn't take the form. Instead, he walked dejectedly to the end of the corridor, pulled out his phone, and called my mother. The moment the call connected, all the fear, rage, and despair he had bottled up erupted into a hysterical roar. "Lily, you maniac, you've killed someone. The doctor said they're calling the police on you. Our son is dying. Even if he survives, he'll be brain damaged. It'll cost hundreds of thousands. You've destroyed this family. Are you happy now?" His voice cracked with anguish as he screamed. Then he slumped against the wall and slowly slid down. The nurse urged from the side, "Family member, please go pay the fee quickly. We need to start the medication." My father turned a deaf ear, just staring with vacant eyes while breathing heavily. I calmly walked past him, took the payment slip from the nurse, and asked softly, "Excuse me, nurse, could you tell me where the billing office is?" At that moment, my father's eyes rolled back and he fell straight backward. Doctor, someone's fainted over here." The nurse's panicked cry echoed through the empty hallway. The whole world was in chaos, yet there I stood, perfectly still at the eye of the storm, clutching the payment slip that held my brother's life and our family's future in its hands. The doctors and nurses frantically lifted my father onto the gurney. He'd just had a severe shock and an acute stress reaction, but he would be fine. After watching him being wheeled into the observation room, I took out my phone and dialed home. It rang for a long time before someone finally picked up. My mother's impatient voice came through the phone. "Arthur, how dare you call me? You've ruined my son. I'm telling you, this isn't over," I explained. "Mom, Dad passed out, and my brother is in the ICU fighting for his life. The doctors need a 50,000 yuan deposit right away. Bring all the money from home and come to the city hospital." With that, I hung up before she could respond. About an hour later, my mother finally arrived, looking disheveled from the rush. The moment she saw me, she launched into a barrage of accusations. "Where's that useless father of yours? How much is this going to cost? And listen here, Hope, if you're conspiring with the doctors to swindle me out of money, I'll skin you alive." I replied calmly, "We haven't paid yet." Before my father passed out, he told me to wait for you to make the decision. She raised her eyebrows and stared at me with suspicion. "Stop playing dumb with me. What kind of decision could that good-for-nothing father of yours possibly make? It's you. You're jealous of your brother. You can't stand the thought of him making something of himself and being the one to support me in my old age. That's why you talked your father into bringing him to the hospital, just to drain my hard-earned life savings and make a laughingstock of our family. I told you my method could save him, but you just had to come along and ruin everything, you jinx. I didn't argue with her, just handed her the critical condition notice I'd just received from the doctor. Still bearing my father's fingerprint, she snatched it from me, her clouded eyes fixed intently on the words critical condition, her arrogant expression freezing for a split second, but just a second later, she let out a scornful laugh. As if she'd seen through some grand deception. Critically ill? Don't you dare try to scare me with that. Hospitals always pull this stunt. The worse they make it sound, the more money they squeeze out of you. What bullshit meningitis, it's just a regular fever, they're just trying to con us out of 50 grand. As she spoke, she contemptuously tore the paper that held her son's fate into shreds. We're done with treatment, we're going home. I told you my method would fix him, but you just wouldn't listen. Where's your brother? Get him. We're leaving. As she spoke, she grabbed my arm and tried to drag me out of the hospital. Patients' families and nurses around us cast strange glances our way, pointing and whispering. I let her pull me along, stumbling after her to the payment window. Just as she was about to tell the staff we're stopping treatment, I suddenly came to a halt. She gave a sharp tug, but it didn't budge. Turning back, she shot me a venomous glare. What are you trying to pull now? A stinging slap landed on my cheek, burning with pain. Listen to me, Hope, if you dare hand over a single cent today, I'll beat you to death, she threatened. I didn't cry or cover my face. Right there in the bustling hospital lobby, under the sympathetic gazes of strangers, I spoke each word with deliberate clarity. Mom, I'm not leaving. After saying this, I slowly pulled out 2 items from my worn cloth backpack. The first thing I retrieved was my bank passbook, containing all the scholarship money and allowance I'd saved since junior high. 13,000 yuan in total. The second item was a college acceptance letter, freshly delivered to our home, its golden letters still gleaming with promise. I pushed both items toward my mother in front of everyone. Mom, please don't be angry, and don't worry about the money. What the hell do you know? My voice was quiet, yet thick with emotion and resolve, enough to move everyone present. I'm done with school, I'll go find work at a factory tomorrow. I'm young and strong. I can earn enough for my brother's medical bills. He's my only brother. I won't just stand by and watch him die. Before I could finish speaking, gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. My goodness, this girl is so remarkably mature. How could a mother act this way when she has such a wonderful daughter? She dropped out of college to save her brother. What a devoted sister. These voices pierced my mother like invisible needles, making her once arrogant face flush with alternating shades of red and pale. She was being burned at the stake of public judgment. Her eyes greedily fixed on the passbook, then darted warily toward me, leaving her torn between conflicting impulses. Seeing right through her hesitation, I pulled out the paper and pen I'd prepared from my backpack, scribbled a few lines, and handed it to her. Mom, I know you're worried about me throwing my future away. How about this? Just sign the statement. It says I, Hope, voluntarily quit school and will use all my savings for my brother's treatment. I looked up and said to her in a tone blending innocence with consideration. 3. Once you sign this, when relatives ask, you can tell them I was dead set on saving our brother and you couldn't stop me no matter what. That way, no one can point fingers at you. My mother's face was unreadable under the stark white lights of the hospital lobby. The murmurs around us grew louder and louder. She was breathing heavily, her eyes locked on the papers and pen in my hand. In the end, greed and vanity got the better of her. You said it yourself. She snatched the pen from my hand and scrawled her name crookedly on the thin piece of paper. Lily. The moment I signed, she snatched my bankbook and admission letter without ceremony, clearly worried I might change my mind. I'll hold on to these for you. Don't want you splurging recklessly. With that, she marched straight to the payment counter and slapped the bankbook down. Arg, there's 13,000 here. Let's get this paid first. It never even crossed her mind whether the money would be enough. I didn't care. I just carefully folded the signed statement in half, then in half again, and tucked it into my innermost pocket. This was my contract of indenture, and also my ticket to freedom. With that money, my brother Cashin's emergency treatment went smoothly. A few days later, he was transferred out of the ICU and moved back to a regular hospital room. My father was discharged too, but he looked like he'd aged 10 years and spent his days in total silence. The family kept a grim, silent vigil by the bedside until the attending physician walked in with the final test results. The child's life is out of danger, but the side effects we discussed earlier have unfortunately materialized. He paused briefly before continuing. The bacterial infection has severely damaged his auditory nerve. He's lost all hearing in his right ear. My mother staggered as if struck. Additionally, there's irreversible damage to the facial nerve. Look here, the doctor pointed At my brother's face, the left corner of his mouth is slightly drooping, and his left eye can't fully close. These are symptoms of facial paralysis, and they'll become more pronounced over time. To put it bluntly, the kid's face is crooked. Hearing loss, his face is crooked. Those words struck my parents' hearts like a sledgehammer. My mother frantically rushed to the hospital bed, turning my brother's face from side to side as she examined it. On the infant's face, the left corner of the mouth indeed drooped lower than the right, forming a strange, twisted curve. She leaned close to my brother's right ear again, clapping and shouting, but the child showed no reaction, still sleeping soundly. The son she had dreamed would bring honor to the family and ensure her a comfortable life in her later years had completely turned into an unsightly, defective product. How could this happen? How could this happen? She collapsed to the ground in despair, muttering the words over and over again. I spent all my money, and this is what I get in return. There wasn't a trace of motherly concern in her voice, only bitter resentment and frustration. My father crouched in the corner, hands gripping his hair, on the verge of breaking down. Seeing the expressions on their faces, I knew the moment had come. I quietly packed my small cloth bag, walked over to them, and said in a matter-of-fact tone, "Dad, Mom, my brother's ongoing treatment is going to cost a lot more. I'm heading south today to find work in a factory, and I'll send money home every month." Lost in their grief, they just waved me away numbly, as if shooing a fly. "Go ahead, just go." I turned and walked out of the suffocating hospital room without a trace of nostalgia, leaving the hospital behind. The sunlight outside the hospital was a bit harsh on the eyes. Instead of heading to the long-distance bus station, I went straight to the train station's ticket hall. Half an hour later, I was on a train bound for the provincial capital, watching the cityscape rapidly recede outside the window. From my inner pocket, I carefully pulled out 2 items. One was the college acceptance letter I had thrown in the trash but secretly retrieved. The other was my freedom declaration, signed with the name Lily. Leaning back in the chair, I gazed at the vast world outside the window and let out a long, heavy sigh. The hope that was meant to hope has been reborn from this day forward. A month later, my brother Cashin was discharged from the hospital. My parents exhausted all their savings and borrowed heavily from relatives, barely managing to pull him back from the brink of death. But this home was no longer the home it once was. The once promising golden child who carried the family's hopes has now become a fragile soul requiring constant care and medication. The asymmetry in his face grew more pronounced, making nursing a struggle. He'd often choke until his face flushed crimson. Deaf in his right ear, he spent most of his time in his own world, completely unresponsive to outside sounds. Only when discomfort struck would he let out sharp, monotonous cries, ceaseless day and night, grating on everyone's nerves. Hope turned into disappointment, and anticipation became a burden. The atmosphere at home shifted from lifeless to a powder keg waiting to explode. The first conflict erupted when we scraped the bottom of my brother's formula can. "We're broke." My mom slammed the empty formula can on the table. "Arthur, aren't you so capable? Go on, magically produce some formula for your son." My dad crouched in the corner, silently smoking a cigarette. "What capability do I have? Who is the one who smashed him like this with a single hammer blow back then? How dare you say that?" My mom exploded with anger. "If it weren't for you insisting on going to the hospital and wasting all that money, would our family be in this state? If you had listened to me and just stayed home to sweat it out, you'd probably be fine by now." My dad slammed the cigarette but hard onto the ground. "Listen to you. If I'd listened to you, weeds would be sprouting from my grave by now. You brainless viper, you've destroyed our son, you've destroyed this family." "I destroyed the family, Arthur, you spineless coward. If that little bitch Hope hadn't gotten in my way, my first swing would have landed true. It's you and your daughter, working together to ruin my son." Once the war began, there was no stopping it. They fought over medical bills, over the baby's cries, over every single meal. Everything breakable in the house had been shattered, and the neighbors' gazes toward our home were filled with both scorn and pity. Meanwhile, I was in a university town 1,000 miles away, savoring the most profound peace I'd ever known in both this life and the last. But my parents, all those miles away, had no intention of letting me keep that peace. During my very first week on campus, my mother's call came through. The moment she picked up, she didn't bother with pleasantries, just launched straight into a demanding tone. "Hope, aren't you working now? Where's this month's money? Send it back immediately. Your brother can't miss his medication." I was sitting in the sunlit library, where golden rays danced across the pages of my book, calmly turning a page. I replied in an even tone, "Mom, have you forgotten? You signed that document at the hospital. It was clearly stated in the declaration that we're financially settled. I used all my money to pay the deposit. My obligation is Fulfilled. There was a solid 3 seconds of silence on the other end of the line, followed by an explosive torrent of curses. You little bastard, you set me up. All these years I've raised you for nothing. I hope you die a horrible death. I didn't wait for her to finish. I hung up directly and blocked the number. Starting from the second month, I would send a letter home punctually every month, each time. Seeing my familiar handwriting on the envelope, they would feel a flicker of hope. Thinking I had finally come to my senses and sent money back, but when they eagerly tore open the envelope, there was always just a small, pristine slip of paper inside. On it, written in elegant script, was the same message: Mom, Dad, I'm doing well out here, don't worry about me. For hope kept being rekindled, only to be crushed to ashes time and again. This psychological torment drove them mad far more than poverty ever could. 2 years slipped by amidst the endless arguments and resentment. Cashin was already a toddler taking his first steps. He was thinner and smaller than other kids his age, and his facial asymmetry gave him a perpetually mournful look that made him rather unlikable. That day, he cried nonstop again because he wasn't feeling well. His constant wailing frayed my mother's nerves until she couldn't even focus on her housework. Years of pent-up resentment finally erupted at that moment. She stormed over, shoved Cashin to the ground, pointed her finger in his face, and hurled the most vicious curses at him. Stop that crying. All you ever do is cry, you little curse. I must have been blind. Why didn't I just end you with one blow back then? The little child was so terrified that the crying stopped, and their whole body trembled. He sat on the cold ground, his eyes wide with fear and confusion, staring at the ferocious-looking woman before him. He couldn't make out what she was saying, yet he could clearly see the undisguised, bone-deep loathing and hatred over. The past decade, I managed to complete my university education by relying on student loans and part-time jobs. After graduation, I stayed in this bustling provincial capital, landed a decent job, and found myself a small but cozy rental apartment to call my own. I completely erased all traces of my past and, like an orphan, began building a brand new life for myself back home. Under my meticulous nurturing, had completely transformed into a prison of resentment. Cashin grew up in this cage until he was 10 years old. Due to muscle atrophy in his cheeks, his facial features were distorted, and crooked mouth became an unshakable nickname from his very first day of kindergarten. With deafness in his right ear, he could never clearly hear the teacher in class. His grades were a complete mess, making him the most frustratingly slow student in the teacher's eyes. Poverty meant he was always dressed in ill-fitting, worn-out clothes, carrying the musty smell of mildew that never seemed to wash. Out at school, he was the target of every child's bullying and ridicule. At home, he became the dumping ground for his parents' frustrations and their failed lives. Worthless. Why don't you just die, dash. If it weren't for you, would our family have ended up like this? What sin did I commit in my past life to deserve a debt-collecting demon like you? These were the words he had heard most often throughout his 10 years of life. He was like a plant that had grown in a sewer, twisted, venomous, and covered in the poisonous thorns of inferiority and resentment. But the ones he truly resented weren't his parents, who had brought all this upon him, because my parents had long since found him a perfect scapegoat, a convenient target for him to unleash all his malice. Don't blame us, son. If you need someone to hate, blame that wicked, rotten-hearted sister of yours. One evening, after Cashin had been beaten black and blue by his classmates again, my mother held him close and began recounting that story she'd twisted beyond recognition, her voice softer and more gentle than ever before. Your mother was trying to change your fate for the better, but your sister ruined it. She was jealous of you and secretly chanted a curse, making my hand slip and miss the mark. My father chimed in, adding fuel to the fire. Exactly, your sister was absolutely thrilled to see you get hurt. She pretended to offer tuition money, tricked us into signing, then took off with all the family's savings. That was your medical fund. She wanted you to end up exactly like this. She just can't stand seeing you succeed or our family doing well. A lie repeated 1,000 times becomes the only truth. Cashin harbored a deep-seated hatred for the sister he had never met, yet who had ruined his life. Night after night, he would carve my name into the wall with a knife, fantasizing about making me suffer 1,000 cuts. Finally, at the age of 16, he was expelled from school for hitting a bully in the head with a stone. My parents dragged him home, berating and hitting him the entire way. Once home, my mother pointed her finger in his face and launched into that same old tirade she'd repeated countless times. You useless waste, just like your slut of a sister. Both of you are nothing but burdens. Don't you dare insult me. Cashin suddenly lashed out like an enraged cub, his eyes blazing red as he snarled at my mother. I'm not a failure. It's all Hope's fault. She ruined me. He had finally internalized his parents' decade-long brainwashing, turning it into His own unshakable conviction, "Give me her address, I'm going to find her, I'll kill her," he shrieked hysterically. My parents looked at his contorted face, and instead of being frightened, they exchanged a triumphant glance. They had been waiting for this day for far too long. That night, I had just finished a lengthy overtime meeting and dragged my exhausted body back home. My phone chimed with a ding. It was a text message from an unknown number. I thought it was spam, so I casually opened it. On the screen, there were only a few short words. "Hope, why aren't you dead yet?" Staring at the message on my phone screen, I fell silent for a long time. I didn't reply, nor did I feel afraid. My family finally unleashed the vicious dog they'd been feeding with resentment for 16 years, setting it loose to attack me. I calmly deleted the text message and proceeded to do 3 things in sequence. First, I sent a concise email to my direct supervisor, explaining that due to some complicated unresolved family matters, I might face harassment in the near future, and hoped the company would be prepared. Second, I deposited the signed original declaration along with a copy of the hospital's diagnostic report into a bank safety deposit box, keeping only a notarized copy with me. Third, I ordered a compact, high-decibel personal alarm online. After completing these preparations, I carried on with my daily routine, eating and sleeping as usual. 3 days later, he showed up that afternoon. As I was preparing meeting materials, the receptionist called on the internal line, her voice trembling with nervousness. "Hope, there are people downstairs claiming to be your family. They're making a scene in the lobby demanding to see you, and security can't hold them back." "Understood, I'll be right down." I calmly hung up the phone. When the elevator doors opened to the lobby, a crowd of colleagues had already gathered, drawn by the commotion, and there, at the center of it all, stood my family, the family I hadn't seen in 16 years. My mother stood with her hands on her hips, screaming her head off at the receptionist. My father just stood off to the side, sighing heavily and playing his usual role of the long-suffering, meek man. Behind them stood a gaunt teenager with a sinister glare in his eyes. He was dressed in ill-fitting, cheap sportswear, his hair unkempt, with the left corner of his mouth perpetually downturned in a sneer that made his whole face radiate menace. This was Cashin. I made my way through the crowd and came to a halt before them. "Hope, you heartless creature, how dare you show your face?" My mother immediately redirected all her fury toward me the moment she saw me. "Your brother borrowed $50,000 to search for you. The debt collectors are after him now. You're paying back every cent." My father chimed in immediately, his voice heavy with anguish. "Hope, your brother has had such a hard life all these years. It's all because of what you did back then. You have to take responsibility, bring him to live with you, find him a job, and you'll need to support him from now on." Slap. One wants money, the other wants me to take him in and be saddled with him for life. They're working together seamlessly. My colleagues around me are whispering among themselves, and the looks they give me have grown complicated. I ignored the murmurs and simply looked at them, asking calmly. Before they could respond, I retrieved a laminated A4 sheet from my briefcase, the very copy of that declaration. "Ms. Lily, Mr. Arthur, 16 years ago, you personally signed this document with your own hands." I held up the document for them to see, and for all the onlookers as well. It's in black and white, legally binding. This document clearly states that all financial matters between us are settled, with no further obligations, so I won't be giving you a single cent. My mother's face turned beet red. She tried to snatch it from me, but the security guard stopped her. I turned to my father and caught a flicker of panic cross his face. I took out my phone, opened an audio file, and turned the volume all the way up. "5. By the way, Dad, you seem to have forgotten why my brother ended up like this. Don't worry, I remember it for you." The next second, my father's hysterical screaming from 16 years ago echoed clearly through the opulent company lobby. "Lily, you lunatic. You killed someone. The doctors said they're calling the police on you. You've destroyed this family. Are you happy now?" The voice in the recording was filled with fear and venom, and my father's face instantly turned deathly pale. My mother froze for a split second, then immediately turned the tables, pointing at my father and shrieking, "That's a vicious lie. You're just shouting nonsense to shift the blame. When did I ever say I wouldn't save our son?" I watched her calmly, then tapped my phone screen lightly to play the second recording. It was from 16 years ago. Those shrill, cutting words she'd spat out in the hospital corridor when faced with the critical condition notice. "Critically ill. Don't you dare try to scare me with that. Hospitals always pull this stunt. The worse they make it sound, the more money they squeeze out of you. What bullshit meningitis? It's just a regular fever. They're just trying to con us out of 50 grand. As soon as the recording played, my coworkers gasped in shock, and everyone stared at my mom like she was a lunatic. My Mom's face turned beet red, her lips trembling as she tried to defend herself. I was just angry. I never said I wouldn't get him treated. So you're saying we refuse treatment? A cold smirk touched my lips as I played the final recording. We're done with treatment. We're going home. My method would have fixed your brother completely, but you wouldn't listen. Where is he? Carry him home now. The 3 recordings played consecutively, each landing like a stinging slap that ripped away my parents' facade of being pitiful victims. The hall fell deathly silent in an instant. My father slumped against the wall like a dog with its tendons ripped out under the crowd's scornful gaze. My mother's face flushed from red to purple, then sickly green. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Their supposedly unbreakable victim alliance was shattered to pieces, by their own words, delivered through me. Security. I put away my phone and said to the 2 security guards who had been waiting nearby, "These 3 are my family members, but their current behavior is seriously disrupting my work. Please escort them out." The security guards immediately stepped forward, each taking one of my stunned parents by the arm. They were half-dragged, half-shoved out the door, still spewing furious curses, and Cashin, the Avenger sent as a weapon, stood frozen in place the entire time as he stared at the statement and phone in my hand. His eyes, once filled with nothing but hatred, for the first time showed confusion and doubt when security tossed them out like trash onto the roadside outside the company building. The tension that had held my parents together for 16 years finally snapped. "Arthur, you goddamn monster." My mother lunged at him like a madwoman, clawing and scratching. "You spineless coward. This is all your fault. If you hadn't teamed up with that bitch to snatch our child back then, none of this would have happened. My fault." My father snapped too, shoving her away with bloodshot eyes as he roared, "If it weren't for me back then, the child would have died. It's you. You're the one who destroyed this family with that single blow. Who else can you blame? I destroyed the family. If it weren't for carrying on your family line, would I have needed to beg the gods? The son I gave birth to is destined for greatness. It's you and that little tramp. You turned my blessed son into a curse." There on the bustling city street, under the scornful gazes of countless passers-by, they tore into each other like rabid dogs, channeling 16 years of pent-up resentment, the shame of poverty, and the bitterness of failed lives into the most venomous words, hurling them at one another. And there stood Cashin, right beside them. The conviction he'd clung to for 16 years, that story of "my sister is a demon," had just crumbled to dust in 10 short minutes. So he wasn't some prodigy ruined by his sister after all. From the very beginning, he'd merely been a failed investment in their mother's hands, an inconvenient burden his father was always ready to discard. All the bullying, mockery, and suffering he endured over the past decade, that fortress of hatred he built in his heart, was a complete farce from the very foundation. They eventually found the cheapest possible inn, tucked away in a deep alley of an urban village. The room reeked of damp mildew, with stains covering the walls. The heated argument died down, giving way to an even more suffocating silence. My parents each occupied a corner of the bed, eyeing each other warily as if guarding against a venomous snake poised to strike at any moment. But what they feared even more was Cashin. The young man who had seemed so lost on the street was now sitting silently in the room's only chair. His slightly tilted face showed no expression, yet his eyes, like bottomless, frozen pools, stared back at them with unnerving stillness. Under that piercing gaze, my parents grew restless, struggling even to breathe. The weapon they had raised with their own hands, now without a target, seemed to slowly turn its barrel toward them. The flimsy wooden door of the hotel room was being pounded violently. The next second, the lock was kicked open, and several burly men with scowling faces and tattooed arms shoved their way in, instantly filling the cramped room. The bald leader spotted Cashin cowering in the corner of the bed and broke into a grin. "You little bastard. You're quick on your feet. The 50 grand you owe, with interest, is 60,000 now. Pay up today, or we're taking one of your legs." My parents were scared out of their wits, frantically waving their hands in denial. "Sir, this has nothing to do with us. He's the one who borrowed the money." The bald man sneered and slapped my father across the face, making his head spin. "Enough talk. He's your son. A son paying for his father's debts is only right and proper." 2 men stepped forward, grabbed Cashin by the hair, and yanked him hard to the ground. My mother watched the violent scene unfold before her and let out a hysterical scream. She watched her son about to be dragged away, then glanced at her empty pockets. The instinct to survive overwhelmed everything else. Gripped by sheer terror, she made a decision. Pointing at Cashin struggling on the ground, she shouted to the men, "Don't hit us. He spent all the money. We've been supporting this deadweight. He's been dragging us down for ages." As if that weren't enough, she added a final blow that sent Cashin spiraling into utter despair. Dash, we don't want him anymore. Take him away. He's still got 2 kidneys. They must be worth something. Her words struck like a thunderbolt, leaving everyone in the room frozen in shock. Even the ruthless debt collectors stared at her in disbelief. Cashin, who was being held down by his hair on the ground, stopped struggling. He slowly lifted his head and looked toward his birth mother. The dazed, almost vacant expression on his face completely vanished in that moment. It was replaced by a chilling calm. His gaze slowly shifted from his mother's face and settled on the nightstand. There, a crystal glass ashtray sat. You little. The man gripping his hair was about to curse when Cashin moved. With every ounce of his strength, he smashed the ashtray hard against the man's temple. A dull thud was followed by the man's pained grunt, and blood instantly gushed out. The grip on Cashin's hand loosened. He didn't look at the injured man, nor did he spare a second glance at his mother, who was cowering in fear. He scrambled to his feet, clutching the blood-stained ashtray, and charged straight at his father, who was slumped in the corner of the bed. For the first time, sheer terror flashed across my father's face. They're insane. This whole fucking family has lost their minds. The remaining debt collectors finally snapped out of it, realizing they weren't here to fight to the death, just to collect money. Seeing the situation spiraling out of control to the point of life and death, the bald leader cursed loudly and was the first to turn and rush out of the room. The rest scattered like frightened birds, fleeing without a trace. The door slammed shut behind them, cutting off all connection to the outside world. In the small hotel room, only the 3 of them remained. My mother watched her son approaching step by step and finally broke down. She knelt on the ground, weeping and begging for mercy. Cashin, I'm your mother, you're my son, everything I said just now was nonsense. Please spare me. 6. Cashin ignored her. He just walked silently, step by step, toward his cowardly, hypocritical father who had used him as a shield his entire life. Then, he raised the ashtray in his hand. A week later, I received a call from the police station in my hometown. On the other end of the line was a man's voice, formulaic and devoid of any emotion. Is this Ms. Hope? Regarding the case of Arthur and Lily, we need you to return to handle the funeral arrangements. Your brother, Cashin, has been criminally detained by our bureau on suspicion of intentional homicide. I listened calmly and simply said, okay, I understand. I took 3 days off and returned to the small town I had fled from 16 years ago. There were no tears, no sorrow, not even the thrill of long-awaited vengeance. My heart was filled with an unprecedented, vast tranquility. I signed various documents as the next of kin to dispose of my parents' remains. Finally, I returned to that long dilapidated old house. The room was thick with dust, and the air carried the scent of poverty and despair. It's over. I entered my parents' room, pulled open the bedside cabinet, and found that familiar, rusted toolbox tucked away in the deepest corner. I opened it. The claw hammer lay quietly inside. This very object had set in motion the tragedy spanning 2 generations of our family, and was the source of all the evil. I closed the toolbox, took it out of the house, and sealed the place shut. Outside the county town lay a murky moat, its waters flowing sluggishly. I walked onto the stone bridge at the river's center, opened the toolbox, and pulled out that hammer. It felt heavy in my hand. Gazing at it felt like staring at the absurdity of my misspent youth. Then, I raised my arm and with all my might, hurled it violently and far into the river. The hammer hit the water, splashing up a ring of murky ripples, then quickly vanished, sinking into the dark riverbed without a trace. The ripples on the water's surface spread out in widening circles until, finally, calm was restored. It was all over. I turned and walked toward the train station, bathed in the fading glow of the sunset. Behind me lay a hometown I could never return to and a past long buried. Ahead stretched my own life, finally free from all constraints. Story 2. In our past lives, my sister married a merman whose wealth rivaled nations. I wedded a penniless merfolk. Yet unexpectedly, the merman proved cold-blooded and cruel. My sister's marriage became miserable, while my gentle merfolk rose to stardom. Our love story became the envy of the world. Consumed by jealousy, my sister murdered me. After rebirth, my sister rushed to rescue that stranded mermaid. She gloated, "Sister, it's my turn to enjoy the mermaid's tender affection. Since merfolk are cold-blooded by nature, you'll die alone." I nearly burst out laughing when I heard this. Everyone knows mermaids are filthy rich. I've always dreamed of living that lavish lifestyle, endless wealth, 0 responsibilities, and a husband who might as well be dead for all I care. As for that merman, pure trouble. In the dead of night, his shimmering tail coiled around me, that aristocratic voice, cool as moonlight, dripped with possessive hunger. "Shira, shall we continue?" Tears welled up in the corners of my eyes. "Aren't mermaids supposed to be cold-blooded? 1. You're just a lowly merman. How dare you reject my advances?" In a quiet alley, a handsome merman was being beaten by a group of people. His face was being trampled on the ground by a spoiled girl, his wounds mixed with dirty mud, looking utterly pathetic. I happened to be passing by the alley entrance, and when the merman saw me, it was as if he had seen his savior. He broke free from their grasp with almost all his might, throwing himself in front of me. "Please, save me." The girl caught up to him. "Are you sure you want to get involved?" I smiled faintly. "Go on." The merman's face was filled with disappointment, even a hint of resentment in his eyes. "I find it laughable. In my past life, I saved Soren, wrote songs for him, and helped transform him from an obscure, down-and-out merman into a beloved superstar. He crafted this devoted lover persona publicly, constantly professing his gratitude toward me, but I later discovered by chance that he'd been secretly involved with Fawn, his former bully, all along, and that he actually resented me for saving him. He confessed that he'd fallen for Fawn long ago, but turned down her confession back then because he felt unworthy of her. Had I not meddled back then, they would have ended up together, to be with Fawn openly. Soren even slipped me slow-acting poison in secret, tragically, before I could gather enough evidence to send him to prison. My stepsister caused me to fall to my death. This lifetime, I've decided to honor Soren's wish and stop meddling in others' affairs. He should be thanking me instead. What right does he have to resent me? I'd barely taken 2 steps when my stepsister came charging out of nowhere. She shoved me aside violently and rushed to the merman's defense. "I won't let you bully him." I froze. My stepsister is utterly selfish. She couldn't care less about anyone else's well-being. My stepsister shot me a look, her eyes gleaming with triumph. Silently, her gaze conveyed, "Sister, this lifetime, it's my turn to win the merman's favor." What more was there to understand? My stepsister was also reborn, too, in our world. Humans and beastfolk coexist peacefully and can even fall in love and marry. After all, beastfolk possess unique talents. They're in no way inferior to humans. Take merfolk for example. Most have extraordinary intelligence and have amassed considerable wealth. In my past life, my mother saved a mermaid. That mermaid happened to be the patriarch of the obscenely wealthy Ronson family, who proposed a verbal marriage pact with our household out of gratitude. Then my scumbag father had an affair with my stepmother while still married, driving my mother to an early grave with heartbreak. To make matters worse, my stepsister stole my place and married the Ronson family heir. She was absolutely smug back then, convinced that unimaginable wealth was about to fall into her lap. But merfolk are cold-blooded by nature, with mercurial tempers. My stepsister found no happiness in her marriage. Meanwhile, I married the merman my stepsister once scorned. Blessed with a golden voice, he swiftly rose to stardom. He cultivated a devoted husband persona, and I became the envy of everyone. At a party, my stepsister, consumed by jealousy, pushed me off a tall building. I, in turn, dragged her down with me. Looking back, neither of us survived that fall. At this very moment, Fawn coldly stared at her stepsister. "Are you sure you want to meddle?" The stepsister continued to shield Soren. "Others might fear you, but I don't. Go on. Try to hit me if you dare." Fawn was no pushover. "Fine, I'll take you down too." The next second, the alley echoed with the stepsister's blood-curdling screams. That's when she finally remembered me. "Sis, call the cops, hurry." I quickened my pace. The very next day, I heard my stepsister had been beaten so badly she was hospitalized. As for Fawn, my stepmother had her hauled off to the police station. In my past life, I'd scared Fawn off by pretending the cops were coming, so none of this ever happened. My worthless father and stepmother nearly lost their minds seeing my stepsister's broken hand. "What are we going to do? You're supposed to get engaged to the head of the Ronson family in 2 days. Looking like this, how can you possibly go through with the engagement?" My stepsister pouted. "I don't want to marry Ronson, I want to be with Soren." My worthless father's eyes widened in shock. "Have you lost your mind? You're throwing away unimaginable wealth for some stinking merman." Clinging to his arm, my stepsister cooed, "Dad, Soren isn't some nobody. He writes amazing songs and has an incredible voice. He's going to be a huge star someday." My stepsister still doesn't know that all the songs Soren sang in our past life were written by me, but to establish his image as a musical genius, he publicly claimed all his songs were his original work. Back then, I was fooled by his sweet talk and thought that lovers didn't need to be so particular about such things, so I didn't object. In this life, Soren can forget about becoming a big star. My stepsister noticed the disapproval on my scumbag father and stepmother's faces. She continued, "Mom, Dad, marrying into a wealthy family isn't that simple. Someone as naive and guileless as me would be devoured alive if I married Ronson. Let my sister marry him instead. Would you really send me to my doom?" The doting stepmother was quickly persuaded. She said to me grudgingly, "What a lucky break for you. Soon you'll be trading your rags for riches." I pressed my lips together. If we're being honest, this marriage was always meant for me. The Ronson family initially agreed to an oral engagement with my family out of gratitude for my mother saving a life. However, this arrangement was only brought up by the elder Ronson patriarch on his deathbed, when he requested that Ronson marry a daughter from my family, but he never specified whom to marry, giving my scumbag father and stepmother room to maneuver. In the end, they arranged for my stepsister to wed Ronson. As I was leaving the hospital room, my stepsister called out to me, "Shira, I know you've been reborn too, don't celebrate too soon. Haven't you realized, a loveless marriage is just stale leftovers, utterly meaningless?" Her lips curled in delight. "This lifetime, it's my turn to bask in a merman's tender affection. Since merfolk are cold-blooded by nature, you can look forward to dying alone." I smiled faintly. "Thanks for the blessing." My stepsister's smile froze. "Keep telling yourself that." She had no idea I was being completely serious. Back then, my scumbag father and my mother actually loved each other for a while, but it didn't last. My father started an affair with my stepmother while my mom was still pregnant with me. My mother passed away from SARS shortly after I was born. My stepmother treated me harshly, and it wasn't until I was an adult that I finally knew what it was like to have enough to eat and wear. For me, money is far more important than love. For Ronson met with me on the eve of my engagement. He was a handsome merman, to be precise. He possessed a striking, almost aggressive kind of beauty. Ronson had fair skin, sharply defined brows, and piercing, ice-cold blue eyes. A pair of semi-rimless, gold-framed glasses rested on his high-nose bridge, subtly softening his otherwise unapproachable demeanor. Even confined to a wheelchair, his commanding presence remained undeniable, yet his striking looks had girls discreetly snapping photos with their phones. Ronson cut straight to the chase when we met. "Miss Shira, are you absolutely certain about marrying me?" I nodded. Ronson gave me an indifferent glance, his tone aloof as ever. "Think carefully, I've no interest in romance. Money's all I can offer you." My eyes lit up. Money sounded perfect right here, right now. With a sincere expression, I confessed, "To be honest, Mr. Ronson, I've liked you for a long time, every day. Just seeing you makes me feel like the happiest person in the world. It's okay if you don't love me, as long as I love you." I imagined Ronson as a wad of cash and poured out my heart to him, confessing my feelings nonstop. Since I saw him as my long-term meal ticket, I naturally had to go all out in providing emotional value. My words were incredibly heartfelt. After all, who doesn't love money? So Ronson never doubted my love for him. "I understand," Ronson said with rare remorse in his ice-cold eyes, handing me a card. "There's $5 million in here. Take it for now." $5 million. The moment Ronson dropped $5 million, I knew I hadn't married the wrong man. I was ecstatic, but I still pursed my lips demurely. "You know I love you for who you are, but this is the first gift you've given me, and I simply must accept it." Ronson sighed softly, then had his secretary hand me an invitation to an auction. "Anything you fancy in there, bid on it. Consider it my gift to you. As for anything else, don't even think about it." "Got it," I readily agreed. If I recall correctly, everything at this auction is valued at over $10 million. I'm only Ronson's fiancée-to-be, and he's already this generous. If I were to become Ronson's wife, the unimaginable wealth would be absolutely insane. The moment Ronson left, I was beaming, brighter than the sun. Here comes my fabulous life of leisure and freedom, with a husband who might as well be dead for all the difference he makes. Before getting into the car, Ronson glanced at me through the restaurant window, his eyes flickering with confusion. "She's this overjoyed about marrying me. Is she really that in love?" Even he didn't realize it himself, but upon this realization, his usually jade-cold expression softened ever so slightly. 5, cheerfully humming a tune, I made my way to the front door. I bumped into Soren, the merman, ringing my doorbell. He was specifically there to visit my stepsister, who had just been discharged from the hospital. Seeing me, Soren's face clouded over. "Shira, I really misjudged you. I thought you had a kind heart, but I never imagined you'd just stand by and do nothing." Soren and I were college classmates. We used to volunteer together at the orphanage. "It's not like he doesn't know me at all. Not after all this time." I shot him a glance. "Looks like you're not dead yet. Still got energy to curse like a fishwife." "Huh, you." Soren flushed with anger, yet perplexed. "Did I ever wrong you before?" "Not at all." I smiled faintly. "I just can't stand scum like you living comfortably in this world. Got a problem with that. In my past life, he was the one who begged for my help when bullied, yet rode to fame on songs I wrote. He got everything because of me. Yet he told me he'd always hated me, and that he'd fallen in love with Fawn, the one who used to bully him." Soren is such a hypocrite, playing both sides. He's truly a top-tier scumbag. Soren's face flushed even redder. Just as he was about to explode, his stepsister ran over. She shoved me away, as if she was terrified I'd steal Soren from her. Then she clung to Soren's arm again, beaming with sweetness. "Darling, you came to see me." Soren smiled gently at her. "I made chicken soup to nourish you." Overwhelmed with gratitude, his stepsister planted a kiss on his cheek. "You're so sweet." Soren's lips tightened as he suppressed his impatience, muttering, "A young lady should act with more restraint." My stepsister shot me a defiant look. "You're my boyfriend now. Kissing you is my natural right. Who dares object?" Indeed, things between my stepsister and Soren progressed at lightning speed. Just 2 days ago, my stepsister confessed to Soren, and he accepted without hesitation. I know exactly what game Soren's playing. Soren is a pauper now. My family owns a moderately successful company, and he plans to use it as a stepping stone to become worthy of Fawn. Before they entered the house, my stepsister shot me a warning glance and whispered, "Shira, stay away from Soren. I'm his girlfriend now." I calmly replied, "Don't worry, I'm not blind. Soren's neither as handsome as Ronson nor as straightforward. What matters most is how generous Ronson's been to me." What was I thinking? Falling for an ungrateful jerk like Soren again? My stepsister wouldn't buy it. "Stop pretending. You're clearly eaten up with regret. You saw Ronson today, didn't you? He's an ice-cold monster. You'll never feel an ounce of his love. You simply don't exist in his heart. Not like Soren, so gentle and attentive. Being with him feels like breathing pure sweetness." I shot back, "Is love really that important for me? Love isn't a necessity. I've lived my whole life without much love, and I'm doing just fine. In fact, it was back in high school when my deadbeat dad cut off my tuition and living expenses. He sugarcoated it as me coming of age and needing independence, leaving me to endure some truly wretched days. Money matters far more than love ever could," my stepsister said coldly. "Keep lying to yourself." She glided into the room while I headed upstairs. Just as my stepsister and Soren were enjoying their sweet moment, I heard a commotion downstairs. "Soren, are you out of your mind? Fawn beat me up like this, and you want me to drop the charges and get her out of jail?" That was my stepsister's voice. "My scumbag father refused to reconcile with Fawn, so she's looking at least half a month in detention," Soren said gently. "Sable, the Fawn family is not to be trifled with. I'm afraid Fawn will come back to get revenge on you." My stepsister sneered. "I'm not to be trifled with either. If she dares to hit me again, I'll make her regret it." Seeing that he couldn't convince my stepsister, Soren gave up. The two became a sweet, loving couple once again, that is, if you ignore the darkness lurking in Soren's eyes. After getting my fill of gossip, I contentedly returned to my room. Soren, the stepsister, and Fawn, these three villains have truly found each other. I have a feeling their lives are about to get very interesting, but none of this concerns me anymore right now. I have more pressing matters to attend to. 6. I made my way to the slums in the northern part of the city. This place is a melting pot of all sorts, breeding violence and crime. Following my memory, I arrived in front of a shabby, low-roofed house. From inside came the sound of a middle-aged man whipping a girl with his belt. "Just sign with the agency and you'll be a star. I'll get $500,000 up front. What's your damn problem? Waiting for debt collectors to beat me to death before you're happy? I'll teach you some gratitude, you ungrateful brat." I gave a subtle nod to the two bodyguards I'd just hired. They burst in immediately and stopped the man's brutality. The man, a bully who preyed on the weak, saw two burly men approaching and his arrogant demeanor instantly deflated. "I'm disciplining my own daughter. Don't meddle in my business." I handed the man a contract. "Sign this disarmament agreement, and this $500,000 is yours." The man's eyes lit up. "Really?" Then, he looked at me with a mix of belief and suspicion. "Why are you helping that little brat?" "That's because she once helped me." The assaulted girl was Lyra, Soren's greatest rival in their past life singing career. Merfolk are born with exceptional singing voices. Lyra's voice possessed a uniquely healing quality. If it weren't for every song I wrote for Soren becoming a massive hit, Soren wouldn't even be a match for Lyra. It was then that Lyra accidentally stumbled upon Soren and Fawn's affair, and also learned about their plot to slowly poison me. Unable to bear seeing me hurt and deceived, she told me everything immediately. Before I even had a chance to thank her, she fell to her death. Only then did I realize that Lyra, who had always healed her listeners with her songs, was the one who needed healing the most. She came from a terrible family background. Her father was an alcoholic and a gambler. Every time he got drunk or lost money gambling, he would beat her and her mother. When Lyra was 8, her mother was driven away by her father, and when Lyra turned 18, her father sold her for 500,000 yuan to an unscrupulous talent agency. She became an object, not only forced to make money for the agency but also treated as a plaything for men's amusement. Given a second chance at life, I'm determined not only to change my own fate but also to rescue Lyra from her dire circumstances. Pulling myself back to the present, I could tell Lyra's father was trying to extort me. I calmly stated, "I only have $500,000. Don't even think about asking for more. You have 1 minute to decide, or the offer's off the table." Seeing my ordinary clothes, Lyra's father mostly believed me and grumbled, "Fine, I'll sign, won't I?" I handed Lyra the document, disowning her. "You're free now. Will you come with me?" Lyra was so tiny then, with crisscrossing scars all over her arms, yet her eyes weren't melancholic like in her past life. They held a stubborn defiance. Like a small, wild animal, Lyra nodded without hesitation. "I will." 7. I rented an apartment for Lyra and gave her enough living expenses to ensure she could live comfortably. Lyra looked at me gratefully. "Sister Shira, what can I do for you?" I simply asked. "What is the one thing you want to do most?" I don't need Lyra to do anything for me, if possible. I wish Lyra could live freely and unburdened, unlike how she was constrained in her previous life. Lyra answered without hesitation. "I want to be a singer. My mom always said my voice has healing power. I hope my songs can bring people some joy," she continued. "The reason I didn't sign with that agency is their contract felt like indentured servitude. Signing would mean selling my entire life to them. If I didn't comply, I'd face crippling penalties. That's terrifying." A thought struck me. "Would you consider signing with my company instead? With my current funds and songwriting skills for Lyra, I could totally start a talent agency just for her. Lyra is a born singer. Her stardom was inevitable. When that happens, it'll be a win-win for both of us." As for Soren, without my songs, he's not even qualified to be Lyra's rival this time around. My stepsister will never become the enviable wife of a superstar. Lyra's eyes sparkled even brighter. "That's perfect." 8. Running a talent agency costs way more than I imagined, but no worries. I've got Ronson's exclusive auction invitation. Any single item in there is worth millions. Ronson told me I could bid on whatever caught my eye. His assistant Xander would handle the payment. That meant all I needed was to win the cheapest auction item and discreetly resell it for instant startup capital. With this plan in mind, I sent Ronson a good morning text along with a cheesy pickup line I found online. "Just bought a clock. Guess what kind? I'm clock crazy about you." These days, I make sure to greet Ronson morning, noon, and night each time with a fresh corny pickup line. After all, I love him, even when we're apart. I need to make sure he feels my presence. Besides, cheesy pickup lines don't cost a thing, just as he said. Ronson is naturally aloof and has little interest in romance, so he's never replied to any of my messages. I even suspect he's never once opened our chat window. The auction was scheduled for the afternoon. When I arrived, luxury cars crowded the entrance of the auction house. I handed Ronson's invitation to the tuxedo-clad attendant. After verifying its authenticity, the attendant was about to let me through. "Wait a minute," a chilling voice suddenly spoke up behind me. "Waiter, are you certain this invitation is genuine?" I turned to see a middle-aged man with a ponytail glaring at me with clear hostility. Drawing from my past life's memories, I recognized him. Thorn, the owner of the talent agency Lyra had signed with in her previous life. He shamelessly exploited Lyra, treating her like merchandise and delivering her to different men's beds. It's safe to say that if Lyra jumps to her death, he'll be the one most to blame. This time, it's probably because I took Lyra from him, which made him unhappy, and that's why he's targeting me like this. The waiter confirmed again. "Yes, this is Mr. Ronson's exclusive invitation. It must have been given to this lady by Mr. Ronson." Thorn raised an eyebrow slightly. "Oh, she didn't steal it, did she?" Looking at how this lady is dressed, she doesn't seem like someone connected to Ronson. The marriage arrangement between our family and the Ronsons was only proposed on the old patriarch's deathbed, so it's no surprise Thorn wasn't informed. The waiter, eager to curry favor with Thorn, began eyeing me with visible hostility. "Miss, are you absolutely certain this invitation came directly from Mr. Ronson?" I replied coolly. "Feel free to call and verify with him if you doubt my word. I'd love to just call him directly, but knowing Ronson's cold shoulder when it comes to replying to my messages, I highly doubt he'd pick up." The waiter, intimidated again, mumbled, "If you say so, then it must be." I gave him a long, hard look. "You just believe whatever irrelevant people tell you, with that kind of intelligence. It's no wonder you're stuck as a doorman." Stung by the remark, the waiter's face flushed a delightful mix of red and white. I took the invitation, ignoring Thorn and the attendant, and was about to enter when my stepsister blocked my way. She had just arrived with Soren and happened to witness the whole spectacle. At this moment, my stepsister's face was filled with surprise. "How could Ronson have given it to you? He's never given me anything before." "This invitation, you either forged it or stole it. In my previous life, the first time my stepsister met Ronson, he very directly told her that he had no interest in romance, and that he could give her nothing but money, asking her to consider carefully if she truly wanted to marry him. My stepsister is incredibly ambitious, scheming to win Ronson over with her unique charm. Once she does, Ronson's fortune will be hers to squander as she pleases. She declared he was the only man for her, then feigned indignation, claiming She loved him for who he was, not his money, and that he shouldn't insult her love with financial offers. That's why Ronson didn't give her $5 million, nor did he give her this invitation. At the time, the stepsister mistakenly believed her disdain for money would pique Ronson's interest, perhaps even affection, but she was wrong. Even after their marriage, despite her every effort to seduce him, Ronson never touched her. Remaining as cold and indifferent as ever, eventually, she followed her mother's advice and drugged Ronson. It was then that the stepsister witnessed the violent, bloodthirsty side hidden beneath Ronson's calm and indifferent exterior. His blue hair grew wildly like seaweed, fins sprouted behind his ears, and cold scales appeared on his pale cheeks. A bloodthirsty glint emanated from those deep blue eyes. He resembled a mythical sea demon, alluring yet perilous. An icy hand gripped her throat, his voice as cold as ice, warning her not to do anything unnecessary even. Though Ronson released her quickly, that was the closest she'd ever felt to death. After that, it became difficult for her stepsister to even get a glimpse of Ronson. Yet, her stepsister couldn't bring herself to divorce Ronson, or rather, she couldn't bear to give up her status as his wife. Later, when her stepsister saw Soren on TV, claiming to be a doting husband who cherished me, she became extremely unbalanced. She's no less capable than I am, so why is her marriage a mess while mine is so harmonious? At a banquet, consumed by jealousy and hatred, she pushed me off a tall building. At this moment, my stepsister's tone was somewhat aggressive. Yes, it must have been you who stole it. She considered herself far superior to me, so it made no sense that Ronson sent me an invitation but not her. Thorn asked his stepsister, "Do you know her? She's my half-sister." The stepsister replied with a glint of malice in her eyes, "You wouldn't know this, but my dear sister here has always had sticky fingers since childhood." Soren chimed in, "Shira's wicked by nature, exactly the type who'd pull something like this." Their words cast a shadow over the room, and the guests' glances toward me grew noticeably colder. I know talking won't do any good. No matter what I say, they'll always have a comeback to shut me down. If words can't solve it, then fists will. At least I'll get some satisfaction. I lunged forward and slapped my stepsister and Soren, one right after the other. As for Thorn, who started all the trouble, I didn't let him off easy either. I kicked him right in the groin. Things happened so fast that by the time the waiters came to intervene, I was already on my third round of fighting. It's not that I'm too strong, it's just that they're too weak. My stepsister and Soren had just recovered from their injuries, and Thorn, well, he'd long been hollowed out by booze and women. He was all show and no substance. My stepsister and Soren clutched their cheeks in unison. "Have you lost your mind?" I flexed my wrist. "I'm Ronson's fiancé. If others don't know, you certainly should. How dare you slander me like this? I'd be doing myself a disservice if I didn't teach you a lesson." My stepsister's eyes flickered. "Sister, you've truly gone mad. To actually delude yourself into thinking you're the head of Ronson family's fiancé, just as I expected. At least I got to enjoy beating them, having already vented my anger." Hearing her twist the truth doesn't rile me up anymore. Thorn grimaced in pain, while laughing hysterically. "Ronson's fiancé, if you're really Ronson's fiancé, I'll eat shit standing on my head." He shot the waiter a meaningful glance. "What are you waiting for? Arrest that thief immediately. After the auction, I'll personally interrogate and teach them a lesson." His tone dripped with venomous malice. The waiter I'd humiliated earlier had been nursing a grudge, and now he was about to grab my wrist. "Who dares lay hands on my fiancé?" A frosty, irritated voice rang out from nearby. Following the sound, I saw Ronson had somehow appeared at the auction, his icy gaze fixed on the unfolding farce. My stepsister's face instantly changed when she saw Ronson. In her mind, Ronson had zero interest in these auctions and would never normally show up at such events. That's why she dared to slander me without hesitation. Thorn was completely stunned. "Wait, this lady really is your fiancé, Ronson?" "To be precise, she's my fiancé-to-be, Shira, and I will be holding our engagement party next Monday. You're all welcome to attend," Ronson said icily, "except for Mr. Song. I won't tolerate anyone who disrespects my future wife." Thorn's face drained of all color. As a businessman, he knew Ronson's ruthless reputation in the corporate world. Those who crossed Ronson never lived to regret it. Well, he's a merman, born cold-blooded. Now it seems we can add another trait to Ronson's list. He's fiercely protective of his own. Thorn, his arrogance completely gone, pleaded Ronson, "I didn't mean to target Miss Shira. I was blind. I didn't recognize that Shira was your fiancé." "Ronson, please, you're a magnanimous man. Just forgive me this once," Ronson said calmly. "I'm not the one you should be apologizing to. It's Shira. You want me to apologize?" A shadow flickered in Thorn's eyes. "He absolutely despises me. First, I rescued Lyra from him, then I just beat him up, completely humiliating him, and now, because of me, he's alienated Ronson. But he's a businessman. After weighing the pros and cons, he reluctantly apologized to me. Miss Shira, I'm truly sorry. It's all my fault for causing you such distress today. I chuckled. Who said I was wronged? I gave it right back to them on the spot. Felt amazing. Thorn choked back his words before forcing a smile. Miss Shira's straightforward nature explains why Ronson adores you so much. Watching Thorn's frustrated yet helpless expression, I finally understood what it meant to borrow power from the mighty. Gotta admit, it felt incredibly satisfying. Another day, another reason to love Ronson even more. Thorn continued. Miss Shira, I truly didn't mean to cause you any trouble. I had a bit too much to drink today, and I was out of my head. I apologize for offending you. Miss Shira, what do you fancy? Jewelry, or perhaps antiques and calligraphy? I'll have it sent to your home another day. Along with my sincerest apologies. No need, Miss Shira. Please don't worry about the cost, as long as it makes you happy. No amount of money is too much. I cut him off directly. I'm not going to forgive you. Thorn's smile froze instantly. What? It's exactly what it sounds like. Seeing how terrified he was of Ronson, I knew if I didn't forgive him, Ronson wouldn't let him off easy. In his previous life, Thorn had committed many evil deeds. Because of his cowardly nature, he's always managed to avoid any real trouble. This time, it's high time he learned a lesson, so there are fewer victims. Like Lyra, Thorn's face turned ashen. Are you fucking with me? Ronson's 2 bodyguards immediately stepped in front of me. What do you think you're doing to Miss Shira? And no, it's nothing. Facing the towering bodyguards, Thorn regained his composure. The 2 bodyguards looked at Ronson, silently asking how to deal with Thorn. Ronson's tone was flat. Since Shira won't forgive Mr. Song, then just get rid of him. He's only an eyesore to her. Thorn could barely maintain his composure. Ronson, you have no right to do this. I was officially invited by the auction organizers. The auction organizer rushed out. Anyone unwelcome by Ronson is unwelcome here. You're banned from all future auctions hosted by our company. He then turned to the waiter. Consider yourself fired effective tomorrow. The waiter was consumed with regret, while Thorn looked ready to murder me. He's a bully who preys on the weak and backs down from anyone stronger. He won't dare do anything else. Among those present, Thorn's arch-nemesis was the happiest. He walked over to Thorn, patted him on the shoulder, and said, Mr. Song, I'm afraid you're too important to remember trivial things. Let me just remind you of something you just said. If Miss Shira turns out to be Ronson's fiancée, you promised to eat poop while standing on your head. You just wait. Thorn was trembling with rage, surrounded by mocking onlookers. He muttered a final threat before slinking away in humiliation, but this wasn't over yet. My gaze shifted to the stepsister who'd just helped Thorn slander me. 10. To my surprise, before I could confront my stepsister, she'd already gone running to Ronson. She began, Ronson, you're new here, so you might not know the full story. It was my sister who stole your invitation, which is why Mr. Song is targeting her like this, just because Ronson didn't give her an invitation in her past life. She's now convinced that I stole his invitation when I met him last time. My stepsister's thought process is truly bizarre. It just goes to show, reincarnation doesn't necessarily make you smarter. She sighed softly. My sister has always had sticky fingers since she was a child. She was wrong to do this, and I apologize to you. After saying that, she shot me a defiant look. Her thoughts were written all over her face. She just couldn't stand to see me doing well. Ronson lifted his eyelids, his voice impatient. I personally delivered that invitation to Shira. What? My stepsister couldn't believe it. You gave it to her. My stepsister knew merfolk were inherently proud and disdained lying, so everything he said had to be true. My stepsister was about to say more when the auction organizer approached Ronson. Don't worry, Ronson, he said. We won't be inviting someone who twists facts and lacks morals like her back to our auction. An auction attendant moved to escort her out, but she shot him a fierce glare and declared loudly, No need. I'll leave on my own. Before leaving, my stepsister deliberately walked up to me and said, Don't get too ahead of yourself. Ronson is very protective of his own. What he's doing doesn't mean he loves you. Unlike Soren, who checks in on me every day, I'm going to start an agency for Soren and launch his career. Once he becomes a big star, everyone will envy our love. I looked deeply at Soren. Ambition gleamed in his eyes. I lowered my gaze. With me around, he'll never become a big star in this lifetime. 11. Once Thorn and my stepsister left, the farce finally ended. I walked up to Ronson with a smile and said, Ronson, what brings you here? Ronson mentioned that if I ever needed help, I could reach out to Xander, his special assistant, so before throwing punches, I texted Xander with the gist being, I'm about to teach Thorn a lesson and might get locked up. When you see this, come bail me out. But I never expected Xander to show up this quickly, Ronson said succinctly. I saw the message you sent me at 11, after a few seconds of Thought, I remembered the cheesy pickup line I'd sent Ronson at noon. I had a bowl of noodles today. What kind? The kind that makes me want to see you. Wait, does Ronson actually read all my cringy pickup lines every day? I suddenly want to dig a hole and disappear. Ronson handed me a card, saying, Xander mentioned you're starting a business. There's 10 million in here. Take it. I cupped Ronson's face in my hands and gave him a big smooch. Ronson, I'm so incredibly in love with you. Ronson seemed taken aback by my sudden move, momentarily frozen. After a few seconds, his handsome brows furrowed slightly. There are too many eyes on us. Try to be a little more discreet. I naturally pushed his wheelchair forward. With a beaming smile, he added, all right, I'll kiss you when no one's around. Ronson's lips were pressed into a thin line. That's not what I meant. He raised a hand to touch the cheek I had just kissed. His long lashes fluttered down slightly, veiling the confusion in his eyes. He didn't seem to mind my touch. Perhaps I was smiling too brightly. He could see the raw, unguarded love shining in my eyes. 12. I went to the auction with Ronson. With my startup funds secured, I lost interest in the auction and turned my attention to Ronson, showering him with small talk and concern. Apparently annoyed by my pestering, Ronson shoved the auction catalog into my hands. See if there's anything you like here. I replied with a beaming smile. I'll love anything you give me. After all, every auction item here is worth tens of millions. Who wouldn't adore something that valuable? I leaned in to plant another loud kiss on Ronson's cheek. Cold, slender fingers pressed against my lips. Ronson's voice tensed. Have some decorum. Sorry, you're just too gorgeous. I couldn't help myself again. I wasn't saying this to flatter Ronson, but speaking from the heart. Mermen are striking, but Ronson was breathtaking. More handsome than any movie star, with an aristocratic grace they could never match. With such a stunning man right before me, my own fiancé no less, resisting the urge to touch him was nearly impossible. Ronson's expression remained aloof as he glanced at his fingertip that had just brushed against my lips. The girl's lips were soft, her warm breath grazing his finger with a faint tingling sensation. That subtle itch crept into his chest as well. Her eyes shone so brightly, as if her entire world revolved around him alone. His heart raced wildly in that moment, as if something had spiraled out of control. In the end, I successfully bid on a landscape painting. The star attraction of the auction, the priceless blue diamond heart of the ocean, was ultimately acquired by family head Kimrick. Kimrick, a merman with godlike beauty, carried an inhuman aura of icy detachment. His expression only softened when speaking to the woman by his side. The woman was strikingly beautiful with an elegant grace, though a faint melancholy lingered between her brows, like delicate jade on the verge of shattering. Murmurs rippled through the surrounding guests. Yuna's truly blessed. Kimrick just gifted her the ocean's heart, worth 300 million, without a second thought. Blessing? I doubt it. Everyone knows Yuna never liked Kimrick. He only kept her by his side through underhanded means. Mr. Sia has wealth, looks, and treats Yuna better than anyone could ask for. How could she be so ungrateful? Matters of the heart are personal. Let's not gossip about what we don't understand. It suddenly came back to me. In their past life, when Yuna disappeared into the sea, Kimrick went mad with grief and did many reckless things. I only knew about this because Kimrick had publicly offered $1 billion reward for anyone who could find Yuna, dead or alive. The news spread like wildfire, drawing crowds to the coastal area where Yuna disappeared, all dreaming of striking it rich overnight. Years later, Yuna resurfaced overseas. Rumor has it she faked her death to escape Kimrick's control. I'm not sure what happened after that. I lingered on Kimrick for so long that it caught Ronson's attention. That fascinating. Ronson's voice remained calm. I could clearly sense Ronson seemed somewhat displeased. Without thinking, I blurted out, nowhere near as handsome as you. He looks downright scary. Suddenly, he grabbed my hand. What's this about? A faint bewilderment flickered in my eyes. Ronson watched the stage, his voice a little strained. You can't kiss me when people are around, but we can hold hands. This seemed to be Ronson's first move. Feeling delighted, I softly replied, okay. My good mood evaporated the moment I walked through the door. 13. The instant I got home, I found my good-for-nothing father and stepmother sitting on the sofa, looking like they were ready to grill me. As for my stepsister, she was standing behind them, clearly enjoying the show, just as I expected. The moment I stepped inside, my scumbag father slammed his teacup down on the coffee table. You have the nerve to show your face here after what you've done. First, you publicly hit your sister, then you made her the subject of gossip. Who knows what people are saying about our family behind our backs? I raised an eyebrow. Why don't you ask her what good she's been up to? My stepmother pursed her lips. Your sister is still young, a bit impulsive, but she's not a bad person. Can't you just cut her some slack? I scoffed. Still young? She's 23. From the way you talk, I'd think she was still in diapers. And stop calling her my sister. My mother only has one daughter, and that's me. You calling her my sister doesn't bother me, but it certainly bothers my mom. You." My stepmother's chest heaved with anger. She lightly nudged my good-for-nothing father's arm. "Old Sia, control your wonderful daughter." My scumbag father picked up a teacup and smashed it right by my feet. "Shira, you're completely out of control. Do you even see me as your father anymore?" He pointed to the floor littered with shattered porcelain. "Get down on your knees and apologize to your stepmother and your sister, or don't expect me to ever forgive you." I stood my ground. "Of course, I don't see you as my father." "Say that again," I said with a smile. "A man who cheats during his wife's pregnancy. Do you really think you're fit to be my father? If anyone needs to apologize, it's you." And Ms. Jean, kneeling before my mother's memorial tablet. My words left my worthless father and stepmother stunned. In the past, I'd always been the obedient one at home to them. I was just a puppet they could manipulate. Never had I confronted them so directly before. Little did they know I'd been dying to break free from this god-awful family, to stop pretending and finally have it out with them. But when I was younger and more naive, confronting them head-on would only lead to my own downfall. Sacrificing myself 1,000 times over while they remained unscathed wasn't bravery, it was sheer foolishness. If my mom were still alive, she'd never want her beloved daughter to live such a miserable life, so I endured, studied hard, and worked on improving myself, all with the goal of escaping this terrible family and living a better life than any of them in my past life. It took me 2 more years to cut ties with them. Now, with Ronson's backing and my career on the rise, I finally have the leverage to stand up to them. So I sped up the process of severing ties. My deadbeat dad and stepmother exchanged glances. Convinced I was just acting out of momentary anger, their tone softened slightly. "Family doesn't hold grudges overnight. We know you're just venting. Once you cool off, you'll regret treating us this way. Your dad and I are very understanding people. We heard Ronson gave you 10 million. Your dad's business is in urgent need of operating capital right now. Just give him that money, and we'll forgive you." It suddenly hit me that in my past life, my scumbag father's company really did face a crisis. Later, it was my stepsister who called Ronson for help, which saved my scumbag father's company from ruin. I have to say, my scumbag father and his whole family are truly shameless. He's the one desperate for money, yet acts like I should be grateful they're willing to take mine. I shot them a glance, daydreaming already. "Forget a million, you won't get a single cent from me." After my repeated taunts, even that deadbeat father couldn't keep up his loving dad act. Humiliated and red-faced, he pointed at the door. "Ungrateful wretch, all these years wasted on you. Get out. From now on, you're no daughter of mine." I pulled out the parent-child severance agreement I'd prepared long ago. "Words mean nothing. Sign this. Are you out of your mind?" Disbelief was etched all over my scumbag father's face. He'd only said it casually, never expecting that I'd actually produce a parent-child severance agreement. I glared at him with a sneer. "What exactly is there to miss about a scumbag like you? You built your success with my mother's money, then betrayed her while she was pregnant. Don't tell me you actually think I'd hesitate to cut ties with a sperm donor like you. If you can't find a mirror, at least check your piss for some self-awareness. You're not half as important as you think." Called out, the bastard's face turned beet red. "Who says I'm bluffing? I mean every word about disowning you." My taunting worked. The deadbeat father was absolutely seething. No matter how much my stepmother tried to persuade him, he didn't change his mind and just signed his name on it. I got the disownment papers I wanted, and a small weight lifted from my chest. My whole purpose in coming here today was to provoke my scumbag father into signing these disownment papers. This way, I won't have to be involved with these disgusting people anymore. My scumbag father said coldly, "This elite family may look glamorous, but it's actually a den of vipers. If you ever feel wronged in Ronson's family, even if you come back crying, I won't let you through the door. You don't need to worry about that. Ronson is rich. If I'm ever wronged there, I can fly to a resort spa abroad to cry, or cry in a 9-star hotel, or even cry while shopping at a luxury store. Any of those options sounds infinitely better than seeing any of you jinxes." My scumbag father trembled with rage. Get out of my sight." I turned to leave, and my stepsister walked over. "Shira, don't get too ahead of yourself. Soren is about to debut, and he's signed with my agency. Once he becomes a big star, making 10 million will be a piece of cake. Then my dad's company will finally have the capital it needs to operate." I extended a helping hand to Soren when he was at his lowest. "For the rest of his life, Soren will love and cherish me. As for you, all you'll ever get is Ronson's cold, hard cash. No love, no family. You'll just spend the rest of your life alone with your money." I smiled. Genuinely, repeating my earlier sentiment, thank you for your blessing, my stepsister felt like she was punching cotton, slamming the door with a we'll see how long that tough talk lasts. I lowered my gaze. While she had Soren, I possessed Lyra, someone several times more remarkable. Soren would never reach the heights of his past life again. 14. After moving out of my worthless father's place, I contacted a realtor to hunt for a new apartment. Meanwhile, Ronson called. This was the second time he'd reached out to me directly, and my curiosity piqued. I answered the call. Your father just contacted my assistant, Ronson asked. His company is in trouble and he's looking for $10 million in funding. Do you want me to help him? I was somewhat taken aback by my scumbag father's audacity. He'd disown me, yet he thought Ronson wouldn't know that, and was trying to squeeze one last dime out of him. I was a bit surprised Ronson would call me for my opinion. Don't lend it to them. I've already cut ties with them today, I said, lowering my gaze. Why would you specifically call me about this, whether to lend or not? Ronson could totally make that decision himself. After all, $10 million is pocket change to him. Your stepsister is downright insolent, clearly spoiled rotten by her parents. The way she treats you, I suspect mirrors your father's attitude toward you, Ronson said calmly, as a rather petty merman. I refuse to offer assistance to anyone who mistreats my fiancé. The corners of my lips curled upward. What a coincidence. I happened to be quite petty myself. In that moment, warmth flooded through my heart. This was the first time someone had ever cherished me unconditionally. To be precise, it's not favoritism. Ronson is just a bit protective of his own, but I have to admit, having someone in your corner isn't bad at all. Originally, I chose to marry Ronson for the money, yet it seems I've gained something from him that's just as precious as money. I suddenly wondered what kind of mermaid could be as cold-blooded and violent as my stepsister described. The line remained silent for what felt like ages. Ronson, are you still there? Without warning, Ronson blurted out, want to move in with me? What is it? My place is huge, and I'm the only mermaid living there. If you haven't found a place yet, you're welcome to stay with me. Living with Ronson would be a perfect chance to get to know him better. Since I happened to need a place to stay, I immediately agreed. Sure. Meanwhile, Xander, the assistant, widened his eyes in surprise upon hearing Ronson had personally invited me to stay at his place. Assistant Xander had been with Ronson for many years and knew him well. Ronson valued his peace and quiet, and was very territorial. He didn't like anyone else in his personal space, so the housekeepers would only clean and prepare his meals when he was out, quietly leaving before he returned from work. Assistant Xander's curiosity was written all over his face. Ronson was in a good mood and patiently explained, I'm not against Shira's advances, I'm actually curious to see how far things might go between us. Just curious. Assistant Xander lowered his gaze. Ronson probably didn't even realize how serious his expression was when he just asked Miss Shira if she wanted to move in with him, as if he were tackling an unsolvable math problem. Later, after he heard Miss Shira agree, the corners of his mouth unconsciously turned upward. It's pretty clear Ronson's got a thing for Shira, even if he hasn't realized it himself yet. 15. Ronson and I started this rather interesting cohabitation arrangement. I moved into the guest room right next to his. Though we were living together, Ronson was actually away on business trips abroad for quite a while. At the beginning, he only managed to squeeze in a quick trip back for the engagement, but that doesn't mean he wasn't taking it seriously. The engagement party was a grand affair, with all the city's prominent figures in attendance. I once asked Ronson if he wasn't inviting too many people for just an engagement. Ronson earnestly explained to me that while he doesn't care for big crowds, he didn't want anyone like Thorne to ever bother me again. Even though I knew Ronson's reason for doing this was his instinctive protectiveness, even if Xander, his special assistant for many years, were to be bullied, he would still step in, and that truly touched me. It's a truly wonderful feeling to be cared for. After some time, Ronson's overseas work concluded, and he moved back home. It was only then that I discovered Ronson had very poor eating habits. He was so consumed by his work that he'd often lose track of time, forgetting to eat, which eventually took a toll on his stomach. I once saw him in the throes of a stomach attack, his tall frame slightly hunched, his face utterly drained of color, his forehead beaded with cold sweat, and his lips pale. He bore the pain with a stoic expression, not uttering a single sound. In that moment, I felt a pang of sadness. It dawned on me then that Ronson wasn't invincible after all. He, too, needed care. Ronson has helped me so much. I really want to do something for him in return. From that day on, I'd watch him eat dinner every evening. In my free time, I'd also stew some nourishing tonics for him to help him recuperate. If he was late coming back from a business trip, I'd always leave a light on for him. Ronson told me not to bother, just to focus on my own things, but I knew deep Downey was pleased when I showed him I cared. A subtle smile would always play on his lips. This merman is a classic Sundara, 16. While I was busy helping Ronson recover, I didn't neglect my own career either. Ronson gave me a 10 million card at the auction, and with the 4 million plus I already had, it was more than enough to launch my own talent agency. My agency has only signed Lyra for now, and I immediately wrote her a full album's worth of songs. Lyra has a natural musical gift. When she saw the songs I wrote for her, she exclaimed excitedly, "Shira, I've got a feeling these tracks are gonna blow up." When my stepsister heard I'd started an agency to promote Lyra, she called just to mock me. "Shira, have you got money to burn or what?" Signing Lyra, she couldn't measure up to Soren in her past life, and no matter how much you spend on her now, she'll never stand a chance against Soren. My tone-deaf stepsister never paid attention to the music scene in her past life either. All she knew was that Soren always outshone Lyra, so she assumed Soren was superior. Little did they know, Lyra just needed the right opportunity. Lyra's musical talent far surpasses Soren's. With her exquisite tone, masterful technique, and a voice that heals the soul, she's a born diva. Even when her previous agency gave her mediocre songs, her interpretation could breathe new life into them. Unlike Soren, who's considered a decent singer among humans but rather average by merfolk standards, he couldn't hit some high notes, so I had to adapt the songs to suit his range. In our past life, without the songs I wrote, he'd have remained just another merfolk with passable vocals, never would have gone viral. Now that I've met Lyra, I can compose freely while she unleashes her full potential. We're practically the dream team in this lifetime. Lyra will undoubtedly reach greater heights than Soren. Seeing my silence, my stepsister grew even more smug. "Shira, you claim you don't care about Soren, yet you signed Lyra to compete against him. You regret it, don't you, that I got Soren, and his gentle affection, so you're trying to use Lyra to suppress him, to stop me from becoming the envied wife of a big star. Well, let me tell you, it's a waste of effort. True talent always shines through. I'm already preparing to launch Soren's career. In his past life, Soren became a megastar without any backing. Now that I'm supporting him, he'll soar even higher than before," I said calmly. "You're overthinking this. I just want both Lyra and myself to live comfortably, at the very least, better than our previous lives. Though Ronson's money could easily keep me comfortable, just a few of his cards would cover all my needs. I refuse to be some clinging vine dependent on him. That would mean losing myself, becoming nothing but an accessory desperate to please him. Even if Ronson and I part ways in the future, I hope I'll still be able to live a good life. As for Lyra, I hope she can do whatever she wants and no longer have her destiny controlled by others." Unlike in her previous life, my stepsister scoffed. "Really? I don't believe it." Soon enough, my stepsister wouldn't be smiling anymore. 17. Soren and Lyra debuted on the same day, the day before their debut. My stepsister even sent me a taunting message. "Shira, I don't know whether to call you stupid or just plain dumb, daring to debut Lyra on the same day as Soren. What? Got too much money to burn, with Soren around? Lyra's debut won't even make a splash. If Ronson knew how stupid and wasteful you are, bringing shame upon him, he'd definitely give you the silent treatment." I chuckled softly. "Silent treatment? After Ronson and I got engaged, he gives me 10 million in pocket money every month. The 10+ million I spent on starting my company might be a lot to you, but to Ronson, it's just my regular allowance. I spent it, and I spent it. As long as I'm happy, Ronson won't say a word." My stepsister looked surprised. "How can that be? Ronson never gave me that much pocket money in my past life." She quickly realized that in her previous life, the first time she met Ronson, she told him she loved him for who he was and not to insult her with money. This led to Ronson never giving her a bank card again afterward. Because of this, she harbored deep resentment toward their marriage. The stepsister said through gritted teeth, "One day Ronson will realize you're just a gold digger and kick you to the curb. Just you wait." Afraid I'd provoke her further, she hung up in a hurry. My stepsister was hellbent on making Soren an overnight sensation, pouring a fortune into his promotion. Soren's singing talent was mediocre even among merfolk. His current album only exists because my stepsister hummed his future hit songs from her past life memories, which composers rearranged for him to perform. Tone-deaf as she is, the melodies she hummed bore only a passing resemblance to my original compositions. The combination of his forgettable voice and uninspired songs was nothing short of a train wreck. Unsurprisingly, Soren's debut barely made a splash this time. Many netizens mocked. With skills like this, he dares to call himself the next king of pop. What a joke. Are the standards for mermaid idols really this low nowadays? Sugar mommy, pick me. My singing voice is way better than his, and I've got a hotter bod too. I'll definitely make you happier than he ever could." The stepsister was furious and personally jumped into the online debate to clap back at Netizens, what do you all know? Soren is the next big thing in music. Just give him time, he'll become someone you look up to in awe. Netizens, give him time, and he'll only produce more musical trash to pollute our ears. A pop icon, more like Gotham's clown. Hey now, that's an insult to clowns. My stepsister was left speechless. She just threw out a "you'll see, time will tell" before smashing her phone in rage. Even though Soren's debut album barely made a ripple, his stepsister never once suspected it was Soren's fault. Soren debuted 2 years earlier than before, and she thought it was because he debuted too soon, so he hadn't had time to create those songs yet to help him become a talented singer-songwriter like he was in his past life. She even spent a fortune enrolling Soren in a masterclass so he could learn songwriting from the best, unlike Soren, who faced a complete flop right after his debut. Lyra's new album was a huge hit with netizens, immediately topping the new song charts on all major music platforms. This is the first time I've truly felt the healing power of music. Oh my god, I'm hearing angels sing. Is no one going to give Shira some credit for writing Lyra's songs? Her lyrics, combined with Lyra's music, are just out of this world. I only have one wish right now. I really want her to write a song for my idol. Make a wish together. When Lyra and I saw how well our work was received, far beyond what we'd imagined, we treated ourselves to a celebratory dinner. Lyra told me her father had recently lost a fortune gambling, couldn't repay the debt, and was beaten to death by loan sharks. His fate didn't exactly come as a surprise to me. Ronson is still out of the country on business. I'm planning to treat him to a big meal once he's back. Without his financial support, my agency might have eventually gotten off the ground, but it definitely wouldn't have been this smooth. As for my stepsister, there's been no word from her. It's not that she didn't want to, but that she couldn't. After that last conversation, I blocked my deadbeat dad's whole family to stop her from constantly seeking attention. Knowing her personality, I could already guess what she'd say, just some nonsense about me not getting too cocky, and how she'd eventually outdo me. Soon enough, the day came for Ronson to return home. I went to the airport to pick him up, carrying a large bouquet of roses. Ronson is incredibly handsome. The moment he stepped out of the airport, I spotted him. I jogged over to him, gave him a warm hug, and then pressed the roses into his hands, saying, "Welcome back." Ronson's voice softened. "Are you that happy to see me?" I shot back, "And you're not happy to see me?" Ronson paused, seemingly taken aback by my question. He gazed at the vibrant roses in his hand, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I'm happy too," he said. 18. I took Ronson to the tallest restaurant in High City, located on the 128th floor. Inside our private room, Ronson and I sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the entire High City. It's funny, but this place is actually one of Ronson's properties too. As soon as we were seated, Ronson pulled out an understated black velvet gift box. "Congratulations on the huge success of your work," he said. "This is a celebratory gift." I opened it to find a dazzling diamond necklace, so stunningly beautiful that its value was immediately apparent. Ronson really knows how to pick out gifts, I have to admit. Gazing at his handsome face, I leaned in and gave him a big smooch. With a playful smile, I whispered, "No one's around now, so I can finally kiss you." Ronson had a faint, helpless smile in his eyes, as if to say, "There's nothing you can do about me." The dining atmosphere was pleasant until a drunken Thorn suddenly burst in, grabbed a glass, and hurled it at Ronson. "I've already apologized, Ronson. Why are you trying to ruin me completely?" These past few days had been the darkest period of Thorn's life. He's always been reckless, making enemies behind the scenes, but with his wealth and power, no one dared to retaliate. That was until he crossed Ronson, who then sabotaged several of his businesses, one after another, and now, with everyone piling on, he's on the verge of bankruptcy. Learning Ronson was dining in this private room, he stormed over, furious, to confront him. It all happened so fast. Ronson ducked, avoiding the glass, but the dark red wine still streamed down his pale cheek. "Thorn's not done yet. I'm furious. He's my fiancé, and my meal ticket for life. I won't let a single hair on his head be harmed." I stepped in front of Ronson, pushing Thorn towards the door, and yelled out, "Waiter, get him out of here." Behind me, Ronson watched as I fearlessly shielded him, and a different emotion flickered in his eyes, usually as calm as the deep sea. Thorn, seething with rage, grabbed the wine bottle from the table, ready to smash it over my head. "This is all your fault. I wouldn't have offended Ronson if it weren't for you. I wasn't scared at all. I'm trained in kickboxing. The only reason I didn't throw punches at Thorn right then was to maintain my innocent, harmless image around Ronson. Before marriage, it's probably best not to reveal my fighting skills, but if Thorn tries to hurt me, I won't hold back." "Stop it." I twisted my hand to grip Thorn's wrist, ready to teach him a lesson. Then a cold, low voice sounded behind me. Turning around, I saw Ronson approaching. Unbelievable, he was actually standing. What kind of medical miracle is this? Ronson's aura was overwhelming, the air thick with an icy mist as if from the ocean depths, leaving Thorn utterly paralyzed. Then Ronson's jade-like hands effortlessly snapped Thorn's wrist before kicking him clear out of the room. Only then did Thorn snap out of his daze, howling like a slaughtered pig. The waiter rushed over as well, apologizing to both Ronson and me while dragging Thorn out. Thorn had several ribs broken, was spitting blood, and was severely injured. He'd be spending the next 2 months in the hospital. Ronson gave Xander, his assistant who had just arrived, a few more instructions. Thorn's career was over for good, and he'd never harm anyone again. I glanced at Ronson's leg and asked, "Is your leg okay?" When Ronson spoke to me, his icy demeanor melted away, returning to his usual gentle self. "It's nothing," he said. That's when I realized Ronson's legs were perfectly fine all along. As a mermaid, he simply disliked walking. That's why he used a wheelchair on land. What a willful mermaid. Ronson took my hand. "Let's go back." I looked at our clasped hands. This was the second time Ronson had initiated something, even in the car. Ronson didn't let go. He cautioned me, "Next time you're in danger, don't rush to the front like that. Your own safety is what matters most." I know. I wasn't thinking that far ahead then. I just didn't want you to get hurt. That's the truth. He's not just my fiancé, he's also my main financial backer. If anything happened to him, who would make money for me to spend? I won't let anyone harm him. Ronson clearly misunderstood something, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. After returning home, Ronson headed to the backyard swimming pool. I'd never been to the backyard before. This time, worried Ronson might not have eaten enough and his stomach issues would flare up again, I made noodles and went over specifically to ask if he wanted some. The moment I stepped into the backyard, I was captivated by the scene before me. Unable to move, as I approached, Ronson emerged from under the water, his wet hair casually draped around him. His face was expressionless, yet as beautiful as a deity. Below that, I could just make out his 8-pack abs and a merman's tail. His merman tail was absolutely stunning. The scales were mysterious, ocean-like blue, shimmering brilliantly under the lights. It was more dazzling than the most precious jewels. Truly captivating. I couldn't help but ask, "May I touch your merman tail?" Ronson paused for a moment before placing his tail in my palm. I gingerly ran my fingers along it. The texture was cool and silky, like the finest satin. On a sweltering summer day, nothing could feel more refreshing. Ronson's body tensed slightly. After one touch, I couldn't resist reaching for another. The beautiful mermaid's gill fins fluttered behind his ears as he asked hoarsely, "Do you want to do something even more reckless with me?" "What is it?" The next instant, Ronson pulled me into the water, his gorgeous tail coiling around me, his cold, thin lips pressed against mine. Dazed by Ronson's kiss, I still noticed the growing hardness beneath him. Ronson's lips brushed my ear as he murmured, "Shira, you triggered my mating cycle early. You'll have to take responsibility." Wait, do merfolk mating cycles just activate this casually soon? I wouldn't have the luxury of thinking about such things. My consciousness drifted in and out, as if floating on clouds. Every time I thought it was over, Ronson would start again. Tears welled up in the corners of my eyes. Aren't mermaids supposed to be cold-blooded? The merfolk reigned supreme in the water. Once, I pushed him away with all my might and swam towards the shore. In a matter of seconds, the merman's tail wrapped around me. The merman's insatiable voice, thick with possessiveness, whispered in my ear, "Shira, let's continue." Okay, I had nowhere to run. Completely at Ronson's mercy, passively accepting the pleasure he gave. 19. I'm not sure if Ronson was in heat or something, but he was exceptionally passionate and clingy with me, so passionate, in fact, that now whenever I see a swimming pool, my legs start to feel a little weak. Luckily, Ronson is busy with work. This situation lasted less than a week before Ronson had to go on a business trip abroad. He wanted me to come along, but I declined, citing unfinished work. Those moments were pleasurable, sure, but the merman's stamina was overwhelming. I always ended up completely drained and needed some recovery time. During this period, my stepsister called me using someone else's number. This time, she'd lost her previous arrogance. She was here to ask for my help. After Soren debuted, she didn't make much of a splash, and the money she'd invested was essentially lost for good, and all that money came from her deadbeat dad. Back then, her deadbeat dad's company was on the verge of collapse. My stepsister convinced our scumbag dad that Soren was a future superstar, and if he invested in him, they'd make a fortune, saving the company in the process. Because my stepsister had accurately predicted several future events, our scumbag dad believed she had prophetic abilities and trusted her words. As it turned out, Soren's debut failed, our scumbag dad's investment was lost, and the company was on the verge of bankruptcy. My stepsister started trying to drive a wedge between us, saying, "Merfolk are cold-blooded and violent, you won't find happiness With him, your own family is your only true support. No, Ronson is perfectly fine. Spending these days together has helped me understand why Ronson is so reserved. In some ways, our childhood experiences were quite similar. The former head of Ronson's family was quite the womanizer, leaving behind numerous romantic entanglements. Ronson's birth mother, heartbroken and overwhelmed, took her own life and Ronson's by overdosing on medication. The family's nanny discovered them and called an ambulance. Tragically, Ronson's birth mother had taken too much medication and couldn't be saved. Only Ronson survived. This experience made Ronson averse to romance and affection, viewing them as useless and irrational. The old patriarch had numerous illegitimate children, eyeing Ronson's position as heir apparent of the family. Had Ronson shown even the slightest mercy, he wouldn't be sitting as the current head of Ronson's family. His notorious reputation for cruelty and ruthlessness stemmed from the bloody succession war against his bastard siblings. In truth, Ronson isn't the heartless monster people believe him to be. The hardships of his youth built an emotional wall around his heart. Now, that wall is slowly crumbling down. I added, I cut ties with my family long ago. I have no relatives to speak of, my deadbeat father said remorsefully. It was a moment of weakness when I disowned you. All this time, I've worried whether you're eating well or staying warm. In my heart, you'll always be my dear daughter. Oh, this isn't some impulsive decision. I've wanted to cut ties with you for a long time. The deadbeat dad choked, dropping his fatherly act. You'd really be this cruel? Just watch me die, just reaping what you sowed when you betrayed Mom. Enjoy the consequences. I hung up the phone, mulling it over. I realized I'd need to change my current phone number. Remembering my stepsister's vicious nature from my past life, I hired additional bodyguards for round-the-clock protection. 20. Just as I expected, my worthless father's family came looking for me several times, only to be turned away by my security team. Over time, they finally gave up. The days that followed were peaceful and uneventful. My company just signed several talented female artists. These women are incredibly gifted, but their careers never took off in their past lives after crossing someone like Thorne. With my company's management, their careers are now flourishing. The next time I heard about my deadbeat father's family was through tabloid news. He confessed that he'd fallen for Fawn long ago, but turned down her confession back then because he felt unworthy of her. This time in my marriage, the victims weren't me, but Soren and Fawn. Ever since Fawn got reported by her stepsister and was detained for half a month, she's held a bitter grudge against her. When she accidentally discovered Soren actually had feelings for her, she started an affair with him. When stepsister found out, she went to confront Soren and Fawn. Soren was only with stepsister for personal gain. Not only did he fail to profit, but he also became a laughingstock online, so he resented his stepsister. With Fawn now in the picture, he had no desire to be with his stepsister anymore. Soren immediately broke up with his stepsister, and Fawn didn't hold back, mocking her relentlessly. In a fit of rage, the stepsister killed both Soren and Fawn. When my scumbag father and stepmother found out, they helped dispose of Soren and Fawn's bodies. After Fawn's parents learned of her disappearance, they reported it to the police, and my scumbag father's family was quickly arrested. It looks like my scumbag father's family is heading for a reckoning. While my stepsister was in prison, she requested to see me. I didn't go. Later, I heard she attempted suicide several times in prison, muttering about wanting to start over and change her fate, but the guards always saved her. Later on, she started acting completely unhinged. I stopped keeping tabs on her altogether. I've moved on to a brand new chapter in life. Those toxic people and their drama are no longer my concern. 21. A year later, Ronson and I held our wedding on a tropical island. It was an extravagant celebration beyond compare. Amidst everyone's blessings, I walked toward Ronson and toward the beautiful future we'd shared. Story 2. In the previous life, my husband found out about the extreme cold weather 1 hour in advance, but he immediately drove to help his mistress stock up on goods. My daughter and I were alone at home, lacking supplies, in the -60-degree weather. I helplessly watched my daughter die in my arms from high fever. When my husband came back with his mistresses, he scolded me for being on the verge of death, blaming me for not taking care of my daughter. In a fit of anger, he threw me out of the house to reflect on my mistakes, then smashed my frozen corpse into pieces and sent it to the heating plant as fuel mixed with other trash. This time, I woke up 12 hours before the end of the world, and my husband was on the phone with his mother. On the phone, his mother shouted, "Other daughter-in-law always washes my underwear. Why don't you learn from them?" This time, I quickly replied respectfully, "Mom, I will bring you over right away, and I will serve you on my knees." My mother-in-law's arrogance increased further, probably trying to show off to the other elderly women around her. See, daughter-in-law needs to be taught a lesson. When I go back to my son's place, I'll definitely make her obedient. In my previous life, I didn't pay attention to my mother-in-law's scolding on the phone. In order to regain her dignity, she took a 3-hour bus ride to come over, slapped me 6 times in front of my daughter Snow, took all the valuable health supplements from the house, and proudly took a photo of my swollen face to post on her social media. A disrespectful daughter-in-law should be punished. There were a bunch of likes from relatives below. Snow was scared by my mother-in-law's behavior and developed a fever that night. The feeling of my daughter's body becoming stiff with despair in my arms still stabs at my heart. If this kind of nagging daughter-in-law is what you want, then let whoever wants to be it. I'm going to go against this weather and this sky. In front of me, Griffin was satisfied with my answer and nodded coldly, speaking in a condescending tone. You did pretty well today. I'll be back for dinner tonight. Men who regard coming home for dinner as a reward for their wives are probably rare in the world. I clenched my fists, suppressing the urge to tear the other person apart, and forced a smile, saying to Griffin, you can let me use your car today. It's more convenient for me to pick up Mom. Griffin frowned, looking disgusted, and pointed at me, scolding, you're so clumsy, don't scratch my car, you're always at home with nothing else to do, take a bus, and you'll be back just in time to pick up Snow. It won't interfere with making dinner either. I mentally cursed. This car was my dowry. Why does it become his exclusive property just because I let him use it? But I didn't show it on my face, just looked troubled, and spoke softly. You heard what Mom just said. If I don't give her enough respect, even if I pick her up, there will definitely be a scene. Before I could finish speaking, Griffin reluctantly threw the keys at my face. He didn't want to be scolded all night by his overbearing mom. I wasn't angry. I took the keys and started packing the unopened food in the house in front of Griffin, leaving some scattered items as bait to lure him. The suffering I and Snow endured in my previous life, I will make sure you both experience it tenfold. Griffin looked at my actions and stared at me, scolding, what are you doing? I didn't stop what I was doing. The time before the apocalypse was too precious. I directly replied to him, it's to give them to your 7 aunts and 8 uncles, otherwise when Mom comes back, she'll just take more. Griffin couldn't argue with me. He knew his own mother well. Every time she came, she would take everything. It was better for me to just act obediently. Griffin pouted, grumbling, remember to wash the car and refuel it after using it, and then adjusted his hair in front of the mirror before rushing out. I, carrying a bunch of food packages, went directly to the building across from mine. My parents secretly bought a small apartment for me here, saying that a married woman without her own house would be easily bullied. I had cried here countless times, but I never expected this house would truly become a sanctuary for me and my daughter. No time for sentimentality. I quickly took out my phone to contact the construction workers and ordered daily necessities through the food delivery platform. In my previous life, food was scarce at home, but I had the habit of rescuing stray dogs. I survived almost a month by relying on stored dog food and ice, and finally, power and transportation were partially restored. I thought I would be rescued, but instead, Thorne, who came with Griffin, kicked me while I was barely alive and said with a pout, Griffin, are you still thinking of keeping this useless person? Then I'll just leave. When Griffin heard this, he immediately threw me out of the house like garbage without saying a word. In the freezing cold, I could only crouch on the ground, hugging myself, and desperately beat the frozen iron door, begging them to let me in, but I got no response. In the end, my blood froze to the door, and I died still maintaining the posture of beating the door. When they opened the door and saw my corpse, they covered their noses and exclaimed in disgust. Griffin's voice was even colder and more heartless. I should have thrown her away a long time ago. Right now, I had just finished explaining the house's anti-theft and insulation requirements to the renovation worker when I got a call from my mother-in-law. Where have you been? Were you crawling on the way? If you were in the countryside, you wouldn't even get fresh feces. I warn you, if you delay my meal, I will tear your mouth off. What I was thinking in my heart was, it's simple to want to eat that thing. You will have to try it in a few days. But I spoke into the phone in a soft and gentle voice. You need to wash the car clean before coming to pick you up, so that you can have a good face. I will buy you a big portion of pork leg rice now, and make your stomach full of oil. When Grandma heard that it was a small car coming to pick her up, and there would be meat to eat, she made a sound. You are still good at handling things. I won't argue with you. Come pick me up quickly. After hanging up the phone with Grandma, the boxes of warm packs, self-heating hot pots, pre-made meals, and bottled water from the delivery also arrived one after another. In the post-apocalyptic world, where could you still be picky about freshness and nutrition? Survival is the first priority. I looked again at the high-end nutritional products I brought from there, and it should be enough to survive for a month. Considering that my daughter died of a high fever in the previous life, I quickly ordered all the medicines I could buy. I also purchased some solar power panels at a high price through friends, and instructed the workers to install them properly. There are still some things to buy at the market. I mentally listed the items while grabbing my keys and went out to pick up my mother-in-law. After all, That scene on the other side still needs her to play her part. There are still 8 hours before the temperature drops sharply. I opened the community owner group and sent a message using a secondary account. The recent temperature is very abnormal. I saw some people starting to stock up on supplies again. The reason I took on this role is because I believe saving one person is better than none. Most importantly, I want the fact that Griffin found out about the information beforehand to be meaningless. Who are you? Spreading rumors is illegal. My mother-in-law still hasn't finished the salt she stockpiled last time, and now you're back, but this winter is a bit abnormal. When has it ever gotten down to minus 10 degrees Celsius in our city? Maybe we should also buy a little bit. After all, it's inconvenient to go out when it's cold, so we might as well buy more at once. Seeing that everyone had reacted, I felt relieved and drove to my mother-in-law's house. My mother-in-law looked at me with her hands in her sleeves, making a sour face. I never wanted to see you. You're so thin, you don't look like the type to give birth to a boy, you're not good at taking care of people, always looking so cold and distant. Who do you think you're showing that face to? I put on a flattering face, in front of her sisters, took off the gold-plated bracelet I had just bought for 9 yuan and put it on her wrist. Mom, I was once ungrateful. From now on, I will treat you like an ancestor. I have discussed with Griffin, we will let you live in the master bedroom. Don't come back during the spring festival, spend it with us together. My mother-in-law immediately smiled and winked at her sisters, satisfied, and got into the car with me. All the way, my mother-in-law kept talking non-stop, scolding me from my hair to my heels. Instead of wasting time on your appearance, you should focus on having another son. Don't think you're anything special. Once you're in Griffin's family, you have to follow my rules. I nodded in agreement, while secretly hoping that the rules would be as strict as possible. After dropping off my mother-in-law, I directly threw her several cloth bags onto the master bedroom bed, placed the remaining food in the house on the coffee table, politely asked her to sit on the sofa, and then mysteriously said, Mom, I hid a few braised pork hocks under the liquor cabinet, don't let anyone else eat them. After finishing all these tasks, I took out my phone and called Griffin, who obviously sounded very impatient on the other end. Didn't I tell you not to call me when you have nothing to do? Can't you understand what I'm saying? I suppressed my nausea and asked hesitantly, now everyone is talking about stockpiling for the end times, should we buy some too? Griffin's tone turned harsher. You have no brain, how could you fall for this? Don't bother me anymore, buy whatever you want. A woman's soft mocking laughter could be heard in the background, then it was just a dial tone. I looked at my mother-in-law sitting on the sofa, eating happily, with sunflower seeds and chicken bones scattered all over, and I smiled slightly, waving a casual greeting before going to pick up Snow. I checked the time. There were still 5 hours until the end times, and Griffin wouldn't find out the news 4 hours later. At the kindergarten gate, I hugged Snow tightly, crying and kissing her repeatedly, causing my daughter to laugh happily, drawing curious glances from passers-by. In this life, I will definitely protect my beloved daughter well. With Snow in my arms, I went to several markets again, trying to stock up as much as possible according to the list to avoid my child's emotional issues. I also spent some time going to a snack and toy store, watching Snow jump with joy, and I felt it was all worth it. After everything was done, I avoided the crowd and brought the newly bought items back to my small house in several batches. Then I cooked a big meal, turned on Snow's favorite cartoon, and enjoyed this wonderful moment with my daughter. Suddenly, the phone rang. I looked at it and saw it was 7 p.m. Griffin should know about the apocalypse by now. Griffin's voice on the phone was serious and anxious. Dove, hurry and drive to the entrance of Huayan supermarket. I'll be waiting there. I sighed and said, pretending to be scared and helpless, honey, I'm sorry. I clumsily scratched the car, and it's now in the repair shop. I can't drive it. Griffin was stunned for a second on the phone, then a torrent of curses came through. You stupid woman. I'll deal with you when I get back, I timidly replied. I was with Snow when I scratched the car. She was really scared, and I'm taking her to the hospital. I might come back late today. Another round of curses. Then Griffin hung up the phone abruptly. I thought it was time to check how much my news that was leaked in advance had spread. I scrolled through Douyin's local videos and saw many people mocking the elderly for buying excessive supplies. I couldn't help but let out a sneer. Go ahead. I don't believe those dog-and-maid couple without a car can beat those seasoned egg-stealing old ladies. Sure enough, half an hour later, Griffin's call came again, his voice more anxious than before. Dove, you said about stockpiling. Did you buy any? I innocently replied, no, you said not to buy. I thought we still had some food at home, so I listened to you and didn't go. Griffin cursed. When did you ever listen to me like this before? I heard a woman's voice on the other end of the phone, almost crying. What should I do? Griffin, will I starve by myself later. Griffin's tone instantly softened, and he said to me, I have a distant relative coming to visit me, and they're staying over tonight. Before he could finish, I couldn't help but cheerfully replied, Great, Mom is at home. There's a hard dish I prepared for tonight, sure to make you two eat well. The apocalypse officially began. I excitedly turned on my phone, adjusted the video surveillance of the house across the street, opened a bag of chips, and sat cross-legged to slowly watch the showdown between the green tea woman and the wicked mother-in-law. You fucking bitch, you even have the nerve to walk back into the house. In the scene, the mother-in-law was pulling Thorne's hair and pushing her head onto the sofa. The father-in-law had cheated and ran away, and the mother-in-law always strongly despises women like that. After beating Thorne, the mother-in-law wasn't satisfied and pointed at Griffin, scolding, You're just like your damn father, always wanting more than what you have. Thorne's lipstick was smudged, her hair was a mess, and she was crying with a wet face, pleading to the mother-in-law, Auntie, Griffin and I are true love, he's just after your body, and you're just after his stupidity. Thorne's green tea act didn't work on the mother-in-law at all. She scolded while rolling up her sleeves, spitting in Thorne's face. Thorne kept making eye signals to Griffin, but Griffin didn't dare to move a muscle. At this moment, the temperature had dropped to minus 20 degrees Celsius, and the heating and air conditioning had little effect. The three people in the standoff all shivered at the same time. The mother-in-law didn't say a word and immediately tried to push Thorne out. When she heard Thorne shout, I'm carrying Griffin's child, do you want us both to die? Indeed, the mother-in-law stopped instantly upon hearing her son's words. She turned to look at Griffin, and at this critical moment, Griffin could only nervously nod. The mother-in-law changed her expression instantly, smiling. For her, whether it's a mistress or not, the third party is definitely not her. Morality and face mean nothing compared to the value of her grandson. The mother-in-law told Thorne to lie sideways on the sofa, smiling with a grotesque expression, and still couldn't help but mock me. Look at your butt, it's clearly made for giving birth to a son. Even if Dove comes back tonight, I'll let Griffin sleep with you. It's so cold, don't let my grandson get frozen. I looked at the picture of the mother-in-law on my phone, feeling shocked. When it comes to her own life and death, is the grandson still that important? The mother-in-law smiled and told Griffin to prepare all the hard dishes from the fridge to nourish Thorne, but Griffin dared not. In this apocalyptic world, they hadn't had time to stock up, and the food in the house was eaten one meal at a time. Griffin quickly took the opportunity when the mother-in-law wasn't hitting anyone to sort out the food in the house. Several heavy-flavored chicken leg jerky, dry melon seeds, overly sweet-filled biscuits, and heavy oil and salt dishes like braised chicken with peanuts and wife's lung slices are stored in the refrigerator. At first glance, it looked good, and the mother-in-law was drooling, rushing to put the wife's lung slices on the stove. In the end, they only ate this one dish that night with Griffin's intervention. After they finished eating, their bodies finally warmed up a bit. Thorne sat between the mother-in-law and Griffin, smiling, and the family really seemed to be having a warm and happy time. I can only say, you have a big heart, see how long you can laugh. I put down my phone, got up, and took out the health pot to boil a pot of red date ginger tea to warm up. 30 minutes later, the monitor emitted a loud argument. I put a hot water bag in Snow's bed, made myself a cup of ginger tea, and then continued to watch. I want water, not this sweet water that makes me thirstier. The mother-in-law, who had just been speaking politely, suddenly became wild and grabbed a bowl of milk tea and poured it over Thorne's head. Thorne was scared by the mother-in-law's unpredictable behavior and started crying. The sticky and sweet milk tea dripped from his wet hair, mixing with his tears, making him look extremely miserable. Thorne cried and reached for Griffin's hand, pouting and saying, Griffin, Auntie seems to not like the milk tea I gave her. This is the only drink I have left, and I didn't even dare to drink it myself. Griffin's eyes still showed a bit of sympathy, but as soon as he met his mother's gaze, he immediately lost his courage, only able to complain weakly, Mom, I don't know when the water pipe will thaw. The water at home is already so little, and you're wasting it. That's really not proper. Upon hearing this, the mother's eyes widened, and she shouted, You and your wife eat well in the city, but when I come, the food is so stingy, and even drinking water is a problem. Do you want to treat your own mother like this? The pressure of the apocalypse was on Griffin's head, and his mother was also being unreasonable, so he couldn't help but get angry. Do you even know what the situation is now? We only have this much food, and you still want to be the empress. The mother hit the table hard and roared back, If there's no food, why don't you go buy some? I just want to drink water. Griffin burst out screaming and pulled his mother to the window. Outside, heavy snow had almost buried the first floor. Even though the electricity was still on, the thermometer in the living room showed the temperature had dropped to minus 30 degrees. As Thorne approached the window, the milk tea on her head froze, and she quickly stepped back. The mother-in-law finally opened her mouth, looking terrified, and then suddenly collapsed to the ground, crying loudly, I shouldn't have come here. This is trying to make me die here. Where's Dove? She hasn't come back yet, tell her to go buy some food, Griffin finally remembered me, his eyes filled with hope, and took out his phone to call me. I took a sip of hot tea, feeling warm all over, and couldn't help but make a sound of comfort. Dove, where are you? Griffin, hearing my deliberate swallowing sound, quickly asked. I covered the phone and pretended to sob. Honey, you finally found me. I and my daughter are trapped in the hospital and can't get out. The heating and water supply in the hospital are still normal for now, but this snow doesn't know when it will stop, and we can't go back. Before Griffin could say anything, the mother-in-law shouted anxiously, you go buy some food and drinks right away, don't stay there living your life, the mother-in-law and husband won't serve you anymore. At that moment, my heart was colder than the temperature outside, and my life and my daughter's life weren't as important to her as a glass of water. I don't feel like dealing with her. I spoke into the phone, hello, I can't hear you. And then hung up. Two women were shouting and surrounding Griffin in the surveillance footage. That girl is just lucky, she happened to be stuck in the hospital. Griffin, why can she have food and drink? I won't accept that. Griffin, annoyed by the noise, said, enough, and waved his hand, turning away to push the two noisy women aside. He looked out at the snowy window and said to his mother, Mom, while there's still power, go out and get some snow to melt for water to drink. Why should I go? His mother put her hand on her hip, glaring at Thorn. If someone has to go, it should be that outsider. Does she think she can just eat and drink for free here? Thorn rubbed his stomach and stood in front of his mother, saying, if I have to go, I won't be responsible for freezing your grandson. Griffin rubbed his forehead, his expression pained, and could only wrap himself in a blanket, holding a bucket and stepping out of the door. Before leaving, he sent me a message for the first time in his life. Wife, when the snow stops, come back, I miss you and our daughter. I rolled my eyes and deleted this message that annoyed me. A few days passed, and the outdoor temperature dropped to 50 degrees, and the air conditioner outdoor unit had stopped working. Griffin, along with 3 others, sat together wrapped in blankets, looking listless, with thick ice on their eyelashes. The mother-in-law kicked Thorn viciously. You go out and find something to eat. Thorn pouted, looked away, and sat still. The mother-in-law got up and pulled Thorn's hair, while using the other hand to pinch her, muttering curses. I know you only like to eat. Why don't you listen to me? Dove treats me like a grandpa, you little mistress. Why are you still putting on airs with me? Asterisk. Thorn had no chance against the old hag, was being choked by the mother-in-law, and didn't even bother to pretend anymore, flailing his hands and shouting, you old hag, you eat the most, you have so much energy, your son is about to starve. Why don't you go find some food? You're a poisonous woman. Griffin had been exhausted by their constant quarreling, and as he listened to their arguments, he didn't even lift his eyelids, and with disgust, moved to the side, took out his phone and called me again, his voice unusually gentle. Dove, are you and your daughter okay? When are you coming back? I yawned, looked at the takeout box I had just finished, and replied lazily, we're fine, we eat well, drink well, just a bit bored. Griffin was stunned for a few seconds, his teeth almost grinding, and spoke in a cold voice, you're having such a good time in the hospital, my mom and I are about to starve at home. I feigned surprise and asked, how come? We ate plenty at home, and I even left her favorite pork shank in the wine cabinet. As soon as he heard that, Griffin's eyes immediately lit up and he hung up the phone. I saw him on the monitor rushing toward the wine cabinet, excitedly opening the door, only to find a few clean bones inside. Where's the pork shank? Why are there only bones left? Mom, you secretly ate it. Griffin rushed to his mother's side and shouted angrily, his veins bulging. His mother was stunned by his shout and instinctively slapped Griffin. How dare you? How dare you shout at your own mother? Griffin, both hungry and angry, was driven to the edge by the continuous provocation and grabbed his mother's neck fiercely. I'll teach you to eat secretly. I'll teach you to not care about my life. Thorn looked at the cabinet in confusion, and upon seeing the bones, couldn't hide his resentment towards his mother-in-law, and joined Griffin in scolding her. Bold hag, even her own son she betrays, she's not fit to be a mother, let her go out to get food. Who told her to secretly eat it behind our backs? The mother-in-law looked at her son in disbelief, her eyes almost popping out of her head. She kept hitting Griffin's hand to try to break free and explain herself, but she couldn't even say a word, only making muffled sounds. I was watching the surveillance camera, and I couldn't help but open a bag of chips, leaning forward involuntarily. The plot I had set up, of course, I had to watch it carefully. When the mother-in-law turned red in the face and her strength was fading, Griffin finally let go. He coldly threw a quilt in front of the mother-in-law, his voice icy as he said, go get food. Dove said there's some at the hospital, bring it back for me, or you won't be allowed in. The mother-in-law was still catching her breath on the floor. Without even a chance to resist, was pulled by the hair by Thorn, who was laughing coldly, and dragged out of the door. No matter how she struggled and screamed, the mother-in-law disappeared from her sight, and with the temperature outside approaching 50 degrees, she wouldn't be able to last half an hour. She didn't lose to the green tea and White Lotus type, but she lost to her own inhumane son. The mother-in-law's wailing and knocking filled my ears, overlapping with my past self, causing the hatred in my heart to surge again. If it weren't for her, Snow wouldn't have had a fever, and wouldn't have died in my arms in despair. Thorn forcefully closed the door and then clapped his hands. Still somewhat worried, he said, "Griffin, without one mouth, we can just hold on for 2 more days, but this isn't a solution. What's next?" Griffin had indirectly killed his own mother, and morality no longer held any restraint over him. "Dove is doing well in the hospital." Griffin's voice was icy, and I inexplicably shivered. Griffin took out his phone to navigate, preparing to search for the optimal route to the hospital. Suddenly, in the navigation's history, he saw addresses like Hengen Building Materials Market, Xicheng Solar Energy Service Center. Griffin frowned, and against his better judgment, opened a food delivery platform, where he also saw a large number of orders placed a few hours ago. Griffin seemed to have an idea, and his chest heaved violently with anger, biting his teeth as he called me for a video call. While waiting for me to answer, he paced back and forth in the living room, muttering to himself, "Damn it, Dove, if I find out you're behind this, I'll kill you." As I watched Griffin's furious face on the monitor, I suddenly smacked my forehead. Oh no, I was too rushed and forgot that I share several accounts with him. I didn't dare to answer the video call, and Griffin sent me several messages in a row. "Honey, where are you? Mom is in bad shape. If you don't come back and bring me something to eat, I won't make it either. Please answer the phone. I miss you and our daughter. You wouldn't let Snow grow up without a father, would you?" He kept sending messages, so I just put my phone on silent. Seeing that I didn't respond, he kept flipping through his phone, then curled his lips and laughed unusually in the living room. "Griffin, why are you laughing?" Thorn looked at him, trembling with fear. "We're saved." Griffin laughed wickedly while looking out the window. At the same time, I also received a message from him. "Dove, I know where you are hiding. Get your food and drinks ready, and welcome your husband." My heart skipped a beat, and I quietly went to the kitchen to hide a fruit knife in my pocket. At this moment, all the household appliances chimed and turned off, and the entire power system finally crashed. Everyone in the community who was still alive was crying out in helplessness, accompanied by the howling north wind, making it especially bleak on this extremely cold snowy day. I couldn't check Griffin's location through the surveillance anymore, so I just held the cup and stood by the window to observe the outside. Sure enough, 2 black figures jumped up from the second-floor window of the opposite unit. It was obviously Griffin and his partner, because they were dressed too thickly and moved quite clumsily. The snow was too deep. It was only a short distance of 10 meters, but now they were moving forward with great difficulty. When I saw them halfway, Griffin seemed to have his leg stuck in the snow and couldn't pull it out. Thorn slowly moved over and stretched out her hands, struggling to pull him out. She pulled too hard, and Griffin managed to get out, but Thorn fell to the ground immediately. Thorn reached out her hand to ask Griffin to pull her up, but Griffin looked fierce and, instead of helping, lifted his foot and stepped over Thorn's back. When Thorn fell face down, her face was full of fear. She didn't have time to react before she was stepped into the snow. I saw her struggling with her limbs, but Griffin didn't even look back. After 15 minutes, Griffin finally reached this unit, and Thorn, 5 meters away, was already motionless in the snow. A person who doesn't care about his wife and children, who abandoned his mother. How could Thorn have the confidence that he would take care of himself in a life-or-death moment? I looked on with a sneer, tightening my grip on the dagger. "Dove, open the door. It's Griffin." I was startled by the urgent knocking at the door, staring seriously at the entrance without saying a word. "Dove, I know you're in there. You must have stockpiled a lot of supplies. Open the door." Griffin's voice was approaching a plea. "Dove, please save me. I'm alone outside, hungry and cold. You don't want Snow to lose his father, do you, Snow? I'm your father. Open the door for your father." Griffin started to roar, his voice getting louder and louder, and Snow, who was playing with toys, timidly came over. "Mom, is it Dad outside?" Griffin heard Snow's voice, and his knocking on the door became more intense. "Snow, it's me. It's Daddy. Open the door." I pulled Snow close to me and crouched down to ask her gently, "Snow, do you want Daddy to come in?" Snow looked at me with wide eyes. I felt both nervous and guilty, thinking about how to explain to my daughter why I didn't save Daddy before Snow could say anything. Griffin shouted from outside, "Snow, you wanted to go to the amusement park, Right, let Daddy in, and I'll take you. I'll also buy you fried chicken. Snow, hearing this, suddenly became teary-eyed and cried in an aggrieved voice, Daddy is a liar. I don't believe you. You always take Thorn to bully me. You eat the chicken skin, Thorn eats the meat, and I have to suck the remaining bones. If I don't suck them, you hit me. Snow's accusation pierced my heart like a sharp blade. The treasure in my hands was being insulted behind my back. My anger flared up, and through the door I shouted, Griffin, you're not human. I will never let you in. You should die outside. Griffin's voice was full of panic. No, Snow, Thorn's aunt has already been thrown out. She should die outside. Can you and your mom forgive me? Snow buried her head in my arms, and I held her tightly. 10 minutes passed, but I still didn't open the door. Griffin finally lost his composure and, from somewhere, found a heavy object to constantly hit the door. Another 10 minutes passed, but the door remained unmoved. Griffin's strength gradually faded, and although he kept shouting, his actions with his hands became noticeably lighter. Dove, I know I was wrong about Thorn. Please forgive me. Once this cold spell is over, we still have to live together. We can start over, can't we? I couldn't help but mock him. Who gave you the confidence that I would start over with you? I'd rather buy a male dog. Griffin's voice outside the door grew weaker, and his knocking became lifeless and gentle, barely audible. Save me. At that moment, Snow suddenly brought a small stool and carefully opened the cat eye of the inner security door. Snow actually slowly pushed a thin chicken bone out. With a sweet and cold voice, she said, Eat it, Dad. Then she shot a small cup of milk out through the cat eye with a water gun. I quickly worriedly took Snow down and saw Griffin like a dog, licking the milk on the door. However, the temperature was too low, and as he licked, his tongue stuck to the iron door. Griffin painfully knocked on the door, only able to make helpless whining sounds. In order to survive, he cried with tears, using all his strength to pull his head back, tearing off 2 layers of skin from his tongue, and his mouth immediately started bleeding, crying out in pain. The pain also made him regain some consciousness. He swallowed his own blood and then started smashing the door with a heavy object. The security door started to shake, and outside, Griffin laughed maniacally. Dove, when I get in, I'll kill you, I'll throw you down in front of Snow. I quickly covered Snow's ears and comforted her, telling her not to be afraid, that Mom was here. I looked around quickly and saw the water gun in Snow's hand, then suddenly ran towards the toilet. I took the suction pipe and the pressure pump and aimed them at the peephole. Snow, start the water. Cold water was sprayed outwards with pressure. It sprayed onto Griffin, immediately freezing him, causing him to throw away whatever he was holding and quickly move away from the water gun. He was completely soaked and had no strength left to struggle. All his energy was focused on resisting the cold. Griffin lay lifelessly outside the door, his back stuck to the iron door. He had no more strength to tear it open, and he looked down as if accepting his fate, waiting for death. Within 10 minutes, there was no sound left outside the door, but I didn't go to check. The extreme cold had not passed. Survival was still the top priority. A month and a half later, the temperature stabilized at -60 degrees, and transportation and electricity were finally partially restored. Under the unified notification of the rescue team, I and a few survivors slowly opened the door, and Griffin's body fell forward stiffly, with one of his hands still holding a chicken bone that had been gnawed to pieces. I calmly gathered the remaining supplies and followed the rescue team with Snow to the survivors' base. There, we began our new life.